and welcome into the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Got an excellent show for you today, folks. I had the pleasure to sit down and read a book called With the Devil's Help, A True Story of Poverty, Mental Illness, and Murder by our guest today, Neal Wooten. It's one of those stories, folks, where, you know, I think when we're adults, we compare war stories with each other. When we're kids, we talk about who had the worst upbringing. You know, when we talk about, well, you know, when I was a kid, the old man, you know, knocked me around like this, or when I was a kid, we were so poor we didn't have this. Neal has the ultimate, you know what, when I was a kid, not only did the old man knock me around, not only did were we so poor we didn't have this, but he's got a murder story on top of it. And I'm telling you, the amount of knocking around and the amount of poor comes to epic levels, but on top of it, there's a twist at the end of the book, which of course I'm not going to tell you about, that, by gosh, will kind of wrench your heart, twist it, and also it's a little heartwarming as well. We're not going to talk about the end of the book, of course. It's the monster at the end of the book, but so to speak, I love that book, by the way, The Monster at the End of the Book. Let's bring our guest in now, and we'll get down to it right now. Neal Wooten grew up on a pig farm on Sand Mountain in the northeast corner of Alabama, the first person in the history of his family to graduate from high school. Neal went on to graduate from Auburn University with a Bachelor of Science in Applied Mathematics. He became a math teacher and a director of a math school in Milwaukee, winning numerous math awards. He is now the managing editor for Mirror Publishing, a contributor to the Huffington Post, columnist for the Mountain Valley News, curator of the Fort Payne Depot Museum, creator of the popular Facebook comic strip Brad's Pit, and also a stand-up comedian. Let's welcome into True Crime Tuesday, Neal Wooten. Hi, Neal.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate you being here on True Crime Tuesday. I got to tell you, Neal, I was so entertained by this book, and I don't know that that's a compliment I should be throwing out, because it is at times a real gut-wrenching book, but I was very entertained by this book. So I do want to throw out that compliment, first of all, to start things off.
Well, I think I tried to throw in enough humor, too, to offset some of the depressing parts, and that was for the book. That was our life, you know, humor was a big part of our life growing up, and I think it just... I think when you exist in a environment that's that unstable, humor is a refuge. You know, I think that's kind of helps you get through the day. And even my dad had a great sense of humor when he wasn't, you know, flying off the rails. So that I think helped people read the book, was the fact that they could laugh during some of the more horrible times. So. Yeah,
and let's talk a little bit about horrible times and the genesis of horrible times, if you will. The reason I related so much to the book is it seems like, you know, we like to say some things skip a certain generation, or things will skip a generation. It turns out that we'll start it out with saying an ornery temper, and we'll go from there. Never seems to skip a generation in families, does it?
Well, actually, the weird thing is most of the Wooten men, the men in my family, were very gentle men, very kind, very loving. Almost all of them I can think of, except for my grandfather and my dad. So I don't know where that came from, but their tempers controlled them. You know, they were for the most part very loving and caring too. But you always walked on eggshells, because it was never big things that set them off. It wasn't like setting fire to the house or wrecking the family car. It was knocking over a glass of water or something. You know, it was little things that would just make them fly into a rage, and I don't think they could control it. And maybe they did to a degree some of the time, but it just controlled their lives, and they lashed out. And of course, with my grandfather, as it talks about in the synopsis, you know, he was convicted of murder. He murdered his son-in-law over a dispute over potatoes. Mm-hmm. And my dad inherited that from him too. And it made growing up in that environment just, you know, you just never knew what to expect, because they could go from very high, you know, loving character to very low cases where they just let their demons take control, I think. And it was just, but it was really just them too. So I don't think it was a matter of skipping generations, as it just suddenly popped up, it seems, because none of the Wooten men that I know of besides them two were like that.
And we'll talk a little bit about your grandfather and your father's pasts here in a second. We'll kind of go back and forth and talk about the specifics of the book here in a moment. But I want to talk just in generals here for a second. And about families, because the one thing I related to a lot is about our upbringings. We're kind of similar in age, Neal, and you're a little bit older than I am, but what I'm finding is, as I read the book, there are a lot of similarities. Similarities of men in the family that, as they were younger, they were, even though they had a gentle, kind spirit to them, they touched off very quickly and became, if not verbally abusive, then physically abusive. And it seemed like you could never do anything right in their eyes. And that's the one thing I sympathized with you throughout the entire book, reading the book. Did you find, and I didn't get the sense of it through reading the book, did you find that your own father started to mellow as he got older?
Oh, he did. When he had grandkids, he was, he was probably a perfect grandfather. Yeah, definitely. And the same thing happened with Pete. As they got older, they mellowed. I just don't think you would have the energy to continue that your whole life. But I really think it may have even been health issues. My dad had a heart attack when he was 40, and then he had 3 more, and then he eventually had a stroke. And I think some of that may have to do with it too, when you start realizing that, hey, these are the people who are going to have to take care of me.
Yeah.
He had the stroke. And when he had the stroke, this is not in the book, of course, but later on when he had the stroke, I was the only one that stepped up to take care of him. Probably the one person who had the least reason, to do that. No one else would. No one else even cared that he was going through this. So I stepped up and took care of him, So maybe that had a lot to do with the mellowing over time. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just a genetic thing, because both of them seemed to mellow as they got older.
Now, you have, let's kind of go through your family tree here. With your grandfather Pete married initially his first wife, Elsie, correct?
Correct. That's my grandmother.
That's your grandmother. And through them, they had how many children?
They had about 8, I believe. I don't know. I don't know if I could name them all right now.
Well, you don't have to name them all, but
Talmadge was the oldest,
mm-hmm.
and he ended up living in Clinton, North Carolina, because Pete would take him up there to work the tobacco fields.
Okay.
Pete was always chasing money around, and so Talmadge ended up there, and then it goes through Eileen, then my dad Travis, then Boots and Esther, and all the way down to Uncle Jerry, who was by far the youngest. He was the singer musician in the family. So yeah, they were spread out pretty wide, all of them. So
mm-hmm.
And Pete raised none of them. Pete, he was always gone, and eventually some of the kids got scattered. Like Talmadge ended up in North Carolina and just lived there. I know Boots and Esther and Eileen were raised by Elsie, my grandmother, and my dad Travis stayed with his grandparents, Van and Della. He stayed with them until he joined the Army. He never lived with Pete. And when Pete came around, of course, I'm sure he was very mean and violent too, but Dad never lived with him. He was pretty much an absentee father.
And yet Pete would contend that he was just doing what he needed to do to raise the family, even though a lot of that money didn't come back to the family, did it? None
of the money came back to the family. No, he was spending it as fast as he got it. And my dad was the same. My dad had that too. If it had not been for the land that my mom's parents had given to her, the 30 acres there where Dad built the little shack for us to live in, we luckily got to stay there almost all the time. We had other relatives that moved around a lot, and I know that had to be hard on a kid, always being the new kid in school. So we at least had that stability of the property and the fact that my mom worked hard always. If it had not been for my mom, yeah, we would have had no stability at all as a, as a children. So
I got to ask you this, Neal, because it seems to me when I read the two scenarios between your grandfather Pete and your dad Travis, that there's a little bit of narcissism in there, in that they feel that because they're there, they're doing what they can. In Pete's eyes, he's doing what he can to get along, but because I think, wasn't it Elsie had stayed with his parents for quite some time?
Yes.
That he could kind of justify, well, you know what, because Elsie is staying with my parents, I'm doing my part. At least she's with my parents. She doesn't have to, she doesn't have to go anywhere or support herself. That's my contribution. Do you think that's how he saw it?
I'm not really sure, but the point you're making here, that my dad and my grandfather thought they were great providers.
Yes. Yeah.
What they saw in their minds, is definitely different from reality. And it's like they were never wrong on, like my dad and granddad both, had that belief that you never apologize because that's a sign of weakness,
Yep.
So I imagine that Pete thought that, yeah, he was doing a great thing, going around and trying to make money here and there, even though it never got to the family. Elsie had to work hard too. The women always had to work hard for a steady income, whereas the men could make incredible amounts of money at certain times, just, hit miss kind of thing, but they always spent it or went right back into another get rich quick scheme. And so the family never benefited from that. It's amazing. They probably could have been great fathers. They could have, with as smart as they were, if they had just been able to harness that, and we could have had great homes and great, stability in school and everything. And, but no, we didn't have that because Dad was always, like Pete, was always chasing the dream, always an idea how to make a lot of money instead of making a steady income, and they couldn't have bosses. Neither one of them could have had a boss either. They just absolutely, had problems with authority, because they didn't think anybody was smarter or better than they were. And sadly, they were probably right. But when you throw in that ego or that chip on your shoulder on top of it, they couldn't have had a 9-to-5 job anyway.
There's a chapter in the book where you guys move from Alabama to, I believe it's Rome, Georgia, and your dad is succeeding in selling cookware at dinner parties, and he's doing quite well for himself, but he sabotages his own success, doesn't he?
Always. He on Sand Mountain, where we grew up, he was known, for that because he did it for so long, but he would do it maybe a couple of times a year. He would set up dinners and he would get a couple of dinners off the dinners. And the way he was such a showman, though. I mean, he could make that cookware do things that people were like, and he would scare them into going home and using their own cookware again. And, I think, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's some truth to what he would say because he had all this literature about aluminum cookware. And it was written in big magazines, Reader's Digest, and other magazines would write this. And then about somewhere in the mid-'60s, no more articles about aluminum cookware anymore. It just stopped overnight, it seemed. And I think he may have been onto something there. But when he would run those tests on those dinners, yeah, people were absolutely afraid to cook in their cookware again, So he was an ultimate salesman.
Wow. Interesting. Very interesting indeed.
But yeah, if he had done that all the time, and really the way that cookware was set up it was a multi-level marketing. Mm-hmm. One of the first ones ever in this country, I believe. It started in the 50s. And if he never cared to build that, base under him. Right. He just liked the money he made because he was so good at doing it himself, So, yeah. And if he had done that on a regular basis, we would have had a great, life as far as having things that other people had, things that everybody took for granted, like a bathroom, for example. Yeah.
You did spend a lot of your formative years in outhouses. An inside bathroom was not a luxury.
Until I left home, we still had an outhouse.
That's crazy. And a double-seater was a luxury.
We did have electric sometimes. In the 10-year period that the book covers on my side, you could count on, probably one hand how many times we had electricity. It was once every 1 month out of every 2 or 3 years we would have it, and my dad would never pay the bill again. Mm-hmm. So they would cut it off again. And it was such a treasure to have, but when it went off, it didn't faze us because that's just, you get used to using kerosene lamps. We had a Ashley wood burning heater in the living room, and that was the only room that had heat. Even when we had electricity, that was still the only room that had heat. We didn't have heaters. And people don't think, this surprises people about the book, as I talk about the winters in Alabama and not the summers. The summers, of course, are horrible, and that humidity makes the summers, unbearable. But it was the winters that were rough on us, because on Sand Mountain gets colder than any place in Alabama. And I mean, it'll get down to 0 sometimes, but 0 degrees on Sand Mountain feels like 30 below, because of the same humidity that makes the summers unbearable makes the winters just monsters, So it was the winters that stick in my memory and especially when you live in a house that had, really, we just had an outside wall. You could see the 2x4 studs, very rough, real 2x4 studs bought from a sawmill, not like at Home Depot, and you could see those right to the outside wall. So there was no insulation. It was just, we would be under like 10 old blankets and quilts at night. You could see your breath, The morning came, we would jump up and rush to the living room as fast as we could. And so it was the cold that sticks in my memory as a kid.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, Neal, your bedroom had an exposed ceiling, a semi-exposed ceiling.
You could see the joist. The ceilings was and I could see all the way through. I had no ceiling at all in my bedroom, so I could see the plywood of the roof all the way up to the roof, and it was very flimsy plywood. So yeah, as a kid, I talk about those grain lines. They would make images, and that was kind of like my companions as a kid growing up. These creatures out of the grain lines. But yeah, I didn't even have, the other bedrooms had partial ceilings, but it was just that insulation board. It wasn't like there was no sheetrock in this house anywhere. And but mine had no ceiling at all. I could see all the way up to the roof. Yeah.
That's crazy. These days you wouldn't be able to build that shack that your dad built without any building permits or anything like that.
Well, even where my mom, we live in Blake, Alabama, which is unincorporated. So it's possible you could now, because it's not in any actual town limits that would require that. But I'm still not sure. I think the county takes over, though. I don't think you can build a house like that now without a septic tank. Mm-hmm. So you can't get the power turned on if you don't have the septic tank in place. Now, I know that's a rule now. So I don't know if you could or not, to be honest, but I think you're right. I don't think you could build that now, but this was late 1960s,
Yeah.
We lived there. Well, we still live in it. My mom still lives on the same property, but I finally built a house behind the old shack, and my brother actually tore the shack down maybe 10 years ago.
Really? Was that a bittersweet moment when that shack came down?
It was actually, he could have sold tickets. All the family came out to watch. I was living in Milwaukee at the time, so I didn't make it down. But he bought a tractor with a big blade on the front, and it didn't. I mean, the whole thing was falling in. It was dilapidated anyway. So yeah, they just put up lawn chairs and cooked out and made a big event out of it while he pushed the house down.
I wonder what your dad would have said. I don't know why that jumps into my head, but I don't know. I wonder what your dad would have said.
I don't know. Well, Dad was already living in the new place too when by then he got to live in the new house too.
Yeah.
So no one had lived in the it was just a fallen down shed basically is all it was at other point. But he had died. He had passed away by the time my brother just decided to
get rid of it.
I wish he had left it. I wish people could see pictures of it today, but it would have fallen in on its own.
Yeah. It would have become a hazard.
You see I don't know if you have the actual book.
I had an e-copy, so I had an e-copy. A PDF.
In the book, there's actual pictures in the book, and I put a picture, the only picture I could find of the house. We took pictures a lot. Mom always had a camera, but apparently the house was not a favorite backdrop, and I found one picture of my dad and mom and brother and sister standing in front of the house, and it was 9 years old. Yes. It was only 9 years old, and it's already, because he just did it with the flimsiest material you could find.
Yeah, you could see the roof kind of
falling apart.
Yeah, the roof was kind of flaking.
See the roof
Yep. I did see that picture. Yeah.
And you'll notice there's no filling in there. You can go right into the house. And that one story in the book, if you remember, where I'm probably 10 or 11, I'm not sure how old I was, and I wake up in the middle of the night and there's something sleeping by my leg under the covers. It's one of those cold winter nights and a ton of blankets on, and there's something about the size of a cat. And I thought at first it was our cat until I realized we didn't have a cat. Mm-hmm. And so something about the size of a large cat was sleeping by my leg under the covers, had come in the house. And I was too afraid to look to see what it was. I knew they just wanted to be warm like the rest of us. And I left it alone. And when I woke up and it was daylight, it was gone. So I imagine it was a opossum or a raccoon, but whatever it was, I didn't want to find out. I didn't want to bother it. So.
I don't blame you. I mean, especially after there's another incident too, where wasn't it a rat dropped down on your sister's face?
Yes, we always had rats. We didn't have mice like you might have in your house today if you accidentally leave out some food. We had rats, and we had one that was he was a large fellow, not like whatever was sleeping with me, but he was I would say the size of a softball.
Whoa.
He was a big guy, but the one night, apparently, since my sister's ceiling was not full, it was about half, and I guess it just walked right off the edge, and of course, she just, scares her to death, and I had no idea what was going on, and so yeah, rats, possums, raccoons, and my dad's never-ending list of monsters he could fake to scare us, that was our life,
I'm surprised. Now, Daddy had a gun in the house, right? So why would he chase any of these things off, or did he think it was kind of funny that these things came in the house?
I don't think he liked things coming in the house, but he definitely loved the scaring us thing. Somebody was interviewing me recently, and it was like, that must have been horrible for you. And I said, that was not horrible. It was scary, but Dad did that in fun. Dad was enjoying himself when he would hide and scare us. So as long as he was enjoying himself, I was okay with it. Once the initial shock wore off, but to this day, I'm probably the most easily startled person you will meet. And people throughout life, they can just reach it to hand me something and I'll jump. And I try to explain to them that, my dad honed our fight or flight reflex over the years. Hey, guys, hush. I have 3 stray dogs I've taken in recently.
That's fine. They can bark. We love dogs on this program, Neal, so it's not a big deal. That's not owning your fight or flight. That's just plain trauma, Neal. That's what that is. Yeah. It's a trauma response. That you jump so easily. That's just, let's talk about trauma response for a moment. Let's talk about abuse, if you don't mind. That got passed down the Wooten line quite quickly too. From your grandfather to your father to you. That's another thing I could relate to. I jumped about probably 24 times reading this book every time the belt came out. And it comes out a lot in this book.
It does, but it doesn't really represent how often it actually did in life. I couldn't make it just about that. I just tried to touch on some of the ones that really stood out. But yeah, that was probably several times a day that he would just, anything would set him off. Like I say, for the most part, he was very kind and very loving, which made it kind of confusing,
Yeah.
that he would go from this kind of great personality to the person that he would become. And I remembered another one. It's not in the book, but this is so silly. I was 11 years old, and my sister Julene was 15. And Julene and I were the only two that got it.
Mm-hmm.
Nina, who was in between us, was so much smarter. She would start crying right away, and he just never could whip her. But we were defiant, and this one time we only drank Pepsis because that's what Dad liked. And we didn't always have them cold because we didn't have electricity, but it didn't matter. Mom would buy Pepsis when she would go grocery shopping, and they had just came out with a 3-liter. Okay. I guess the top Coke's 2-liter, and it was this 3-liter Pepsi called the Boss. So Julie and I are sitting in the kitchen one day, and the Boss bottle sitting on the table, and I, an 11-year-old, creative mind, was like, and I pointed to it. It was laying down on its side, so it was written backwards, and I said, backwards, that's SSOB. I wonder if that stands for sorry son of a, what? And Julie thought it was kind of cute. Not long after that, Dad walks into the kitchen and starts ordering us to do something, go some chore. We had to do everything, and Julie said, "Okay, whatever you say." That's right, I'm the boss. And when he said that, we couldn't help it. We blurted out laughing.
Right.
And he, of course, had to know why that was funny, and we couldn't tell him, of course, what silly little thing we had just come up with, and he beat us like dogs because we wouldn't tell him what we found funny about him saying he was the boss. So yeah, it was several times a day, and the fact that he didn't consider the punishment successful until he saw tears, that made it worse because we would do everything we could not to cry. We would make it last so much longer than it had to because it was just not right, and we knew that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were the dumb ones, Julian and I. So
well, no, because there's a certain amount of pride you have as a child, and I get that. Between you and I get that, and it's the you're not going to break my spirit type deal.
Right.
You're defiant because you know what? All you have when you don't have a pot to piss in and 2 pennies to rub together is your pride. That's all you have.
I guess I meant what it was.
That's all you have. And I can relate in that deal too. When you don't have anything but that's all you have is to think, well, if I can't stand up, because when you don't have anything but that's all you have. I guess that's the best way to wrap that up. One of the things that kind of shocks me is that when you were growing up, you were exceptional in athletics and baseball, but you didn't seem to get that praise either from him.
Well, Dad was proud of my, playing baseball and football or whatever, because only in the fact that it was a reflection of him.
Right.
So yeah, he did like that, but yeah, I could be beaten, for striking out. Yeah. And which, you're going to have to do sometimes, sure. But it was not allowed for me, so I don't know so much that he was proud of me for being good at sports as he was of, how it reflected on him. He actually came to baseball games. That's about the only thing he ever did. He never got involved in school projects, or he never came to football games. He never came to any of my comedy shows as I got older, but he loved coming to the baseball games when I was very young, up until, probably from age 6 to age 13 when I played baseball. He loved coming to those things because, again, I played till I was 17, I guess, but he loved coming to the games because it was more of, that's my son, see what he can do kind of thing. But my dad and granddad both, I don't know if my granddad ever went to school. My dad only went to 2nd grade at Blake Elementary. And Blake, the little community that has, it's unincorporated, it's probably 100 people that lived there had its own elementary school, and it had a student smoking section, and it was an
Wow.
elementary school.
Yeah.
But my dad only went to second grade because his dad was probably yanking him out to work the fields. His grandfather was probably there, so he just never went back.
Mm-hmm.
But he was incredibly intelligent when it came to math. He was probably intelligent in every area, but math really stands out because most people in the world, that's not their strong point, So all the accomplishments I had in math, I can't really brag about because it was just genetics that were passed down. But he could do advanced calculus in his head, and I always wondered what contributions to the world he could have made had he been born into a regular family, let's say, or a middle class or wealthy family that actually helped him harness that ability, and instead of just always chasing the rainbow, but yeah, he was incredibly smart. But when it comes to athleticism, I don't know. I've never met anyone as strong or as fast. Now, Pete, his grandfather, my grandfather, Dad's father, was faster, but I never saw Pete run. I saw Dad run, and it was unbelievable. Even when he was out of shape and smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. But anything that took hand and eye coordination, things that normally would take people years to master, Dad figured out in minutes, and he would become an expert at anything you gave him, and he would beat you at whatever you taught him to play. It was just amazing athleticism. So yeah, the whole point about the baseball was that I was a reflection on him. So that's why he was supportive of that.
Yeah. And from the book, understanding that Pete, your grandfather, you talk about his speed. You talk about there's an interesting story we'll get to here in the back half of the program in prison about how he got one over on somebody using his speed. We'll talk about that in the back half of the program. Okay. I want to get a little bit into Pete here and in his temper and an interesting thing that happened while he was with Elsie, because it started really early in the relationship. Yes. Something that would forever change the dynamic of the relationship. More so, I think that made her realize that this was not just not going to go well, but that this was going to end tragically if she didn't do something. And that is, I think you know what I'm talking about here, Neal, in that
pocket knife.
Yes, the pocket knife and in the dance. Tell us a little bit about that story and how that went down.
My mom told me that story, which had been passed on to her, of course, because she was not born yet. Mm-hmm. But Pete had came home from one of his money-making ventures, and they, back in that day, they had, this would have probably been along 1930. They had community get-togethers were a big thing back in the day in the rural areas, and they would have dances, and they would have live bands, and so something like that was going on. And he had come home, and he had again spent the money on everything but family, and he had bought this pocket knife, just like an old timer or something. I don't know what brand it was, but that was a very popular brand. And when they started coming out with the bone handles, and they were very fancy, and he was just really proud of that knife, and it probably telling everybody about it. So he wanted Elsie and his mom and dad, all 4 of them, to go to this local shindig, and they couldn't tell him no. His parents were afraid of him, so they all go to this thing, and a man walks up and wants to see the knife, and he hands it to him, and another man walks up, and he's loved showing off his new pocket knife. It was such a joy, and Dad was that way. When Dad would get a shiny new object, he had to show it to everybody. So some guy comes up and looking at it, and then another guy comes up, and he's asking Pete about the tobacco harvest. And when the other guy gets through looking at it, he just hands it back to Elsie. Mm-hmm. And she just sat there holding it. And then another man walks up and asks, and she gives it to him, and he gives it back to Pete. But all it took was Elsie handing it to another man. And even though she knew Pete had it back, on the way home, he accused her And she said, you have it. She saw him give it back to her. And all the way home, walking home from wherever the little get together was, it was probably a couple mile walk to where they lived. And yeah, he just beat her all the way home. And Pete's parents were, they just focused forward, never said a thing. And so yeah, and she's pregnant at this time with their oldest son, their first son, their first child. And they get home, and she's probably already battered pretty good. And he takes off his overalls, and she's pretty much had enough. She goes over and takes the knife out of his pocket and shows it to him to prove that she knows he's lying. And yeah, that's something you just didn't do. And yeah, he took it and opened it and stabbed her with it. Yeah.
Oh.
And then had to run get the doctor just to make sure she didn't die. But there's so many stories that I didn't put in the book. When he married his second wife, Etta, there's a story about when he couldn't find $10 that he had, and he is accusing her, which she would have no reason. She didn't even drive. What would she do with it?
Yeah.
And she was pulling one of those big pots of corn, where you take the corn off the cob and you shave it all off, and you get these huge pots. And he grabbed her head and he held it under. He shoved her in the underwater, and held it there. And there are stories about how he kicked her all the time. She'd be on the ground and he would kick her. He was just. There's all kinds of stories about his temper, like that are not in the book. But the knife with Elsie, I added that because I wanted to just show how he could react, and that's how Dad was too. Dad never pulled a knife on Mom, but he would get very physical. But my dad's hands were like, I kid you not, they were like cantaloupes. They were just humongous. He was such a big person.
Yeah.
Very strong. So, but it was the same kind of thing. So yeah, that did happen, along with a lot of other stories about Pete. And of course, that shooting his son-in-law, of course, was just a spur. He was probably just angry at the moment for some reason.
Well, we'll talk about that here. We'll take a break. We'll talk about that fateful day where he gets into it with his son-in-law, because this goes from being just a personal grudge, more than a personal grudge. It involved business. And whether it was a justified act of aggression or not, because he believed in his mind it was. But we'll talk a little bit about it on the backside of the program here, and get into it a little bit, and we'll see whether Pete was right or not. It turns out that a different switch was turned on in Pete at that point, I think.
I actually have new information about all of that. And keep in mind that the story that I told in the book are stories that were passed down to me from my dad, and everyone left alive. So they're probably not the best sources. And as I mentioned in the book, Dad tried to come up with different stories to get his dad off.
Right.
And some of those stories are still alive today. But I now have new information. I'll tell you now before we break that there was an eyewitness alive. There's an eyewitness alive today. My cousin Mary was 11 years old. That was Raymond and Eileen, my aunt and uncle. That was their oldest child, and she was there that day.
Really?
So,
okay. Yeah. Well, we'll tease you with that before we take a break here. The book, folks, is absolutely amazing. It's fascinating. You're going to want to read it. It's called With the Devil's Help, A True Story of Poverty, Mental Illness, and Murder. Neal Wooten is the author and our guest here today on True Crime Tuesday. We have a link in the description of this program. Go ahead and click it while we are in break. Neal, is there a website that people can check you out at as well?
I don't have a website for me anymore, but you can find me on Simon & Schuster and just Amazon, and find me on Facebook. That's my biggest source of to keep connected to the world. So
okay,
if it wasn't for Facebook, that's I don't do Twitter that much, and I'm not on Instagram at all. But I have a big fan base on Facebook. So
okay, sounds good. When we come back, With the Devil's Help, A True Story of Poverty, Mental Illness, and Murder, we will talk about Pete's fateful day where he shoots his son-in-law over a business dealing, and we'll find out exactly what went down. We'll go over the different angles with our guest Neal Wooten right here on the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. Welcome back to the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. With the Devil's Help, a true story of poverty, mental illness, and murder. Our guest is author Neal Wooten, and we are talking about a little bit of his family history and a little bit about all those topics, poverty, mental illness, and murder. And before the break, we were talking about an incident that happened with his grandfather, Pete, and his son-in-law. And this is one of the juiciest parts of the book, but it doesn't take up a lot of the book, does it, Neal?
Yes.
It's
What's
just
the question? I'm sorry.
It doesn't take up a lot of the book, does it?
It doesn't take up a lot of the book, but it's an important part of the book, obviously.
Yes. Yep. And it turns out that Pete is getting into a different part or another business dealing, but this time he decides to take up with his son-in-law, Eileen's husband.
Right.
And was this in the potato game? Is this what they were getting into?
Yeah, it's apparently they had rented 100 acres and they had 10 acres behind the house in Blake where Pete lived that they were going to plant potatoes, share the work and share sharecroppers. They were going to share the work and share the profit. Now, the story in the book that my dad tells, of course, is that they were going to be partners and do everything and then split the profit. And that's really all I knew because that's the stories that had been passed down from generation to generation. What I know now is that, and it even tells in the book, they lived in Foley, South Alabama, but they were staying at one of their houses in Pine Ridge, which is up in this area. So if he had a house in two different places, that should have been a tip-off. But Raymond Styron's family was very well off. They own thousands of acres along the coast, even still to this day. So they were very well off. So I don't think it was. And after talking to Mary, now she didn't want me to change anything in the book before it went, to press or anything. But and I knew she existed, but I didn't know she was there that day. And she remembers it well. And she's been through almost 60 years of therapy since. She said, to witness that. But her dad's family was very well off, and to believe it or not, her dad's first cousin is the author of Sophie's Choice.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that until I had lunch with Mary one day right before the book was released. Yeah, Styron, I don't think of his name, but they were first cousins. So apparently the way it really worked was that they would allow Pete to do work for them sometimes. Pete would just do work for them. So they probably owned everything, and he was probably supposed to do the work. So if you read the story in the book, you kind of get a sense that Raymond Styron did him wrong. And I'm thinking now, though, that it probably wasn't exactly the way it went. I'm thinking that maybe it was all Pete, and it didn't really play out exactly like it did in the book. Pete, and I have found many more newspaper articles now. Pete just walked down there to where he was working in the field and just pulled out his gun and shot him. There was no conversation. So he was probably aggravated. Who knows what he was aggravated over? It could have been something as simple as knocking over a glass of water. It probably wasn't this huge business gone wrong deal that we were told. I don't know for sure what happened, but I do know, and I have an article that says, he just pulled out a gun and shot Raymond in the chest, probably from about 10 feet away with a 16 gauge double barrel shotgun with one barrel, and it killed him. And then he panicked, realizing what he had done, that his temper had not just destroyed another life, but had destroyed his own now, had gone too far. So we think that's why he turned the other barrel on himself. And yeah, he has very long arms. He could have easily done that. He was a very tall guy. And he turned the shotgun on himself, and he shot himself in the chest at point blank range with the other barrel. Oh. And he lived. He spent a month in ICU at Erlanger. But yeah, the whole thing was just over his temper. It had to be his temper that set him off. So all the stories that we got after that, the stories my dad came up with, probably didn't really happen. And we do have a police report, and I never could find the court transcript because the courthouse said they kind of know where it's probably at, but they moved it around so much. And the lawyer that represented my grandfather, his son took over after him, but they went out of business about 10 years ago, and everything's in storage. So finding the actual transcript proved to be a little too tough before the book was coming out. But I do have the articles about the trial and stuff, So yeah, I'm thinking Mary's story is probably a little more accurate, since she saw it. But she says it basically happened like I told it about the shooting. But I don't think there was really any. Now I really don't believe there was any deal about self-defense at all. I think he just went down there to shoot him, and he did.
So the way your dad told it was Raymond had actually come over to harvest the 10 acres that was behind your grandfather's place, which he did.
It sounded like he was stealing the potatoes.
Yeah,
right?
Like he was going to steal the potatoes and take the money for himself, that he was taking the money that was rightfully Pete's. Pete was trying to defend his own, was trying to get the money that was rightfully his, or he didn't know exactly what he was doing. Eventually, this is what he said on the stand, right? He was just trying to defend his own is the way it was.
Yeah, he was just doing what anybody would do if somebody stealing from him, trying to stop him. Right. That was the story that they stuck with.
Yet when your dad's sisters, your aunts, got on the stand, they kept it very simple. And he was very upset about that.
Yes, he wanted them to lie. He wanted them to lie and make up a story, and they never told him to his face that they weren't going to, because you couldn't have done that. But yeah, when they got on the stand, they just all told the same story, which I believe was the true story, and they didn't stick to Dad's plan, and that always created a rift between Dad and his siblings. They were very close, the Wootens. They have reunions all the time, but I always noticed there was this tension between Dad and most of his brothers and sisters. I mean, when Eileen would visit from South Alabama, and when Talmadge and his clan would visit from Clinton, North Carolina, sometimes they would visit everyone but Dad. And, Boots and Esther lived in the valley in Fort Payne. That's 6 miles away from where we lived on the mountain. We're not talking about a long distance. It's a 5-minute drive.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would come visit, and they wouldn't even visit Dad. The only brother or sister that he had that never left his side, that never, had tension between them, was Uncle Jerry, the much younger brother. And, of course, we find out in Chapter 8 why that is, but Jerry just always stuck with Dad no matter what. But there was always tension between him and the rest, and I would later learn, of course, it was because of what happened during the trial.
So you don't believe Raymond even got off the tractor with the steel rod to defend himself?
I don't think that really happened. No, but I don't think he even had time to know that Pete had a shotgun. According to the one article I found, he was walking behind 2 other people and just suddenly pulled it out and fired. So whether or not Raymond had a rod with him at the time, or whether or not he saw him and quickly grabbed it, I'm not sure. But it did seem to play a factor. This steel rod was apparently there, but whether or not Raymond really took it to defend himself, how do you defend yourself with a steel rod against a double-barrel shotgun?
Yeah.
That's not really even logical. So I don't really know. I think that became part of the exaggerated part of the story that just grew over time.
Interesting. Wow. So Pete is in court, and he's trying to spin his story. Your dad is trying to back him. His sisters, won't back that play. And Pete has a lawyer who's just basically trying to do what he can to keep his head above water and get Pete.
He was a great lawyer. He's very well known in this area. He was a good lawyer. But yeah, that's what he was working with. Yeah.
And I don't think Pete helped his cause when he got on the stand, did he? I don't think Pete helped his cause when he got on the stand, did he?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And that's, everybody knows that today. You don't, take the fifth. You get on the stand, you're going to be asked questions, and you're not going to, you're going to be tripped up. And yeah, so no, but most narcissists, I think, most people with big egos, they think they can just convince people with their words. It doesn't matter what the evidence says. Most people like that just believe that they can just talk people into anything. And for the most part in life, they probably could, but no, he didn't help his cause at all.
And the jury comes back and they found him guilty of what?
Well, they found him guilty of first-degree murder. But some reason, and we don't know why, the judge took it upon himself to change it to manslaughter. So he was sentenced to 10 years instead of life or death, that he would have gotten with first-degree murder. In Alabama back then, he probably would have sat in, what did they call that? The yellow, whatever. I forget what they called the
Old Sparky?
Famous. It could have been that. Yeah, it could have been Old Sparky. Yeah. And but yeah, so the judge changed it because he believed, I think, a little bit of what Pete was saying, that Pete really didn't mean for it to end that way. But he changed it to manslaughter, so he got 10 years in Kilby prison.
So Pete, I hate to put it this way, Pete dodged a bullet.
Yeah, he dodged a bullet. Even still, he didn't quite like prison life, apparently.
Yeah, Pete wasn't fond of prison, although it seemed like with his personality, he started to work his way in and he started to make friends. And
probably would have been all we really know for sure was that he made friends with a guard. He probably made friends with everybody. I mean, him and my dad, I'm telling you, they were very, very likable people. And I mean, both of them probably retained every joke and riddle they ever heard in their life. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, they were probably very entertaining. He was probably very popular in prison because he just knew so many jokes and he had great storyteller. And we know he made friends with a guard and somehow talked himself into becoming a trustee, which blows my mind because, we've seen enough movies or read enough books to know that you don't make violent offenders trustee. That's for the people in there on a drug rap or whatever, but they literally made him a trustee and would just drop him off to do lawn work. That's just crazy.
That is a little crazy. Before we talk about the trustee part, let's talk a little bit about an incident in prison where he managed to get one over and help him get to be a trustee. He decided to use his speed, even though at the time he was in his 50s, right?
Well, he would have been 54, yes.
Yeah. And decides he's going to use his speed or what he thought was his speed at that age. He was pretty confident in his abilities. He was going to use that speed to try and help him become a trustee with this guard. And he said, well, if you guys are taking bets or laying down bets, this guy over here, you can bet a pack of cigarettes and I'll win the day for you. And he went up to a guy named Smokey and said, I can beat you in a foot race.
Now, keep in mind that was what he used to become a trustee, was an assumption. We know about the race, and of course, we all knew about his speed. I mean, growing up, when old people on the mountain, if you ever saw Pete run, apparently they never forgot it, and I only have my dad's speed to go by. My dad would challenge kids 14, 15, 16 years old. Kids is probably the fastest they would ever be in their life. My guys that played baseball and football with me, and he would chase them to challenge them to a race, and they would think he would be kidding because he was out of shape and smoked a lot. And they would line up. We'd probably mark off a start and finish line about 50 yards, and they would line up. And when somebody would yell, "On your mark, get set, go," he would do this thing that I as a writer, I can't even figure out the best words to describe it. It's something you would have to see to believe. My dad would turn around and run backwards and outrun these kids. I mean, he would smoke them, not even close. And he was much faster running forward, and Pete was much faster than him. So I doubt these stories are exaggerated much about Pete's speed. So, yeah, after he recovers from this, he's probably completely recovered from the gunshot, but, he's still been shot in the chest and he's still old, and he challenges the young black man in the prison to a foot race. And, and that's just, and outruns him barely, and he's probably much slower now than he was. And so I don't know that's really was the catalyst that set up the deal for him to become a trustee, but it just made sense, So that part was just creativity on my part in the book to join those two things together.
Mm-hmm. So he gets his trusteeship, and one of the things he gets to do is go over to the warden's place and mow the lawn. That's kind of nice.
That was the second time that he had been dropped off at the warden's house, but he had just found out that his parole was not going to even be, he was not even going to be up for parole for a while. They had been denied. And so, yeah, they literally drop a convicted murderer off at the warden's house with a lawnmower and a gallon of gas and tell him they'll be back to get him in 2 hours. I mean, how crazy is that? And the second time they did it was just not the right time. And then Pete decided to facilitate his own release a tad early, and something we would learn that the FBI kind of frowns upon. Yeah. So he just walked away. It wasn't even planned.
Which leads to the very beginning of the book, Neal, where it's kind of an odd beginning to the book, but it's kind of interesting, where all your life you're driving around and you see a black car with two gentlemen in black suits, and this becomes part of your upbringing.
And I just thought that was normal. I mean, you didn't see people with suits and ties unless it was church or a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
So to see these guys always following us in a black car, sometimes watching us with binoculars, and sometimes, of course, they would be brazen enough to knock on our door, and it would always result in this shouting match between them and my dad. And but I thought that was normal. I used to wonder if some of my friends and relatives in the area had the same car, or if they had their own car with men in black suits. I thought it was something that every family in America dealt with. So, yeah, that was probably stranger than the outhouse and kerosene lamps.
Which is amazing. I don't think most families get followed around by the FBI for that many years. Right. It's just crazy. I'm going to leave the rest for people to read, because this book has an amazing ending. In the meantime, I do want to talk about the only respite you had in your life, which I think we all have them. For people who come from rough upbringings, I want you to talk a little bit about your Uncle Roy.
Well, Uncle Roy was like a lot of the Wooten men. There was Neal Wooten, who was just so kind. He had a Purple Heart in World War II. There was Alden, mentioned in the book, who we called Cotton. Mm-hmm. Everybody called Cotton because when he was a baby, he had solid white hair. And you had, of course, the guy who drove a truck with Dad, Early. Let me just mention Early Wooten real quick. Sure. He died very young of lung cancer, and he never smoked. And he was very, very Christian man. But when he died, right before he died, he gave his sisters what he wanted on his tombstone.
Okay.
And they didn't want to do it. They said, people will laugh at this. He said, I want people to remember me and laugh.
Okay.
And every now and then I'll post on Facebook his tombstone, and I love it. He's buried at Town Creek, where Pete is buried. And it says, here lies a trucker who never was late after 20 years of hauling freight. And now that I stand before the gates so pearly, finally, here lies the late Early. And Uncle Roy was the kindest of all. He was like all the Wooten men on that side of the family. And he was, we would visit him often, and he lived in a little house above Rising Fawn. Like us, he didn't have electricity or running water, and he had an outhouse behind the garden. And he had a fancy well, that rocked circle with a little roof on it, and you lowered this well bucket down. I mean, a well bucket is that long metal thing, not a wooden bucket.
Yep.
You lower it down and fill it up with water and pull it up. I always envy people that had these technological wonders. We had to go down into a hollow with empty jugs to get water. So, but he would make us toys out of wood. He was just very talented with his hands, and he planted 3 trees for me, Julene, and Nina. He planted a holly tree for Julene and 2 cedar trees for me and Nina, named them after us. Never had a tree named after me till then. But yeah, he was just a gentle guy. And of course, that story in Rome, Georgia, where my pit bull Whitey got attacked and would have died, but we took him to Uncle Roy, and he fixed him up and lived there the rest of his life, So just like most of the Wootens I talk about, just very, very gentle and kind and caring. Yeah. But his wife, Helen, she scared me.
Really?
I used to think she was Russian. I mean, she like when you see a Russian woman in the movies, and she was a firm believer in the children should be seen and not heard, So
Hmm.
she was a little scary, but Uncle Roy was one of the bright points of our childhood,
And really seemed like a caring, intuitive, kind of in touch with himself, nature, and everything around him type of guy.
and kids and everything. Yeah, he just yeah, he was just a typical Wooten man.
Yeah,
For
very,
that part.
very, and seemed like he was the father figure you needed at the time that you needed him.
That really is true. He was. He would he would go off with me a lot, and he would teach me about things in the woods, that where he made a flip for me. I love that story when he made me his awesome flip. I would have just made the slingshot type thing, and I would have just done it out of a tree branch, but, he carved it out of wood and, and always these little bits of wisdom, and he had all these little phrases that he would use all the time that I just, will remember always. So yeah, he really was. He was, I never knew if he had kids. So I guess I was like a son to him even.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Again, folks, I want to mention this book and get this book in your hands because it is such a fascinating book. And I tell you, the end is just one of those, oh my God, type of endings that you have to read. You just have to read. With the Devil's Help, True Story of Poverty, Mental Illness, and Murder is the name of the book. Our guest is Neal Wooten. Now, Neal, can you mention the thing you mentioned to me before the program, here on the program?
Do what now?
Can you mention the thing you mentioned to me before the program? Is that news for public consumption?
What was that? I don't remember.
I can edit this part so we can talk about this. The movie?
Oh yeah, sure. I think it's okay to talk about.
Okay.
Here's how I worded it recently on Facebook. I said about 3 months ago, my literary agent emailed me and said, "Hey, your movie agent really loves your book." And all I could think was, I have a movie agent? I didn't even know. Well, my movie agent emailed me about 3 weeks ago, David Fisher, and he said, I have a LA producer interested in making your book either into a movie or a prime docuseries, like a 3 or 4 part documentary for HBO or Showtime, which this producer has done several. And he said, I really think we should pitch the docuseries and retain rights to the movie and hopefully get 2 bites from the same apple. And all I could think was, I have an apple? I didn't know. And then he set up a Zoom meeting with me and the producer a week ago Thursday, and a great guy. And he thinks it would make a great docuseries, but he's absolutely adamant about making it into a movie. So we're working on getting a script writer and going from there. And I've talked to him several times, and the last thing he said Friday, the email, he said, I'm going to be meeting with your team. Maybe he emailed Thursday. So I'm going to be meeting with your team tomorrow and hopefully make this official. And of course, all I could think was, I have a team. So yeah, this is all new ground for me, but it's exciting that it's even gotten this far. And hopefully he's really so he seems just really sold on the book. He thinks it should play out exactly like the book does. And I don't know. He thinks it should start with 18-year-old me at the gas station, like in the introduction, and the old man walks over and finds out my name and asks me, do I know Pete? And tells me about, and he did. He told me about all these stories about how fast he was and getting into that trouble and then taking us back in time from there. Right there, though, we don't have one of the Hollywood script writers on board yet, so I don't know how they'll see it, if it should just go in chronological order all the way through, or if it should do what the story does, going back and forth, what the book does. It's just, when I think of movies going back and forth, there's usually a reason, like Fried Green Tomatoes. Mm-hmm. He's telling the story and he keeps taking you back. So I'll let a professional script writer, once they come on board, and see what they think about that part. But yeah, I think it's okay to talk about where we are right now, and it's just really this new territory is very exciting.
I think when Coppola took Godfather 2 and went back and forth with that trope, it was absolutely beautiful. And the way he did it, to interlope one with the other was absolutely brilliant. I like the way it's done with this book. I like the fact that we keep going back and forth, and you do it with a purpose. You take and you compare and contrast a lot between Pete and Travis and the different situations, and then you meld them together with a purpose. So I think I think the way it's laid out in the book is absolutely perfect for a script. I don't think there's much work that has to be done.
That's what the producer has said as well. I think what I like best about how it's laid out, and I've never seen this in a book, is that it ends exactly where it begins.
Yeah,
with the knock on the door, and so I like that part. And I've gotten when you do something that's kind of against the rules, there's kind of an unwritten law in the literary world that if you're going to break the rules, you better be brilliant about it, So
yep.
I don't know if I pulled that off, but it's just the way the book is laid out is just gotten great reviews from everyone so far.
Yeah, I got
2 reviews from New York Times bestselling authors, which is very nice. So, yeah, so I hope that the layout rang true. But I have had a couple of people. I actually sat in on a book club meeting. I surprised them. The leader of the group asked me would I drop in on this book club meeting, and it's a small town, but they had like 20 people there. It was great. And one of the older ladies said, I had trouble. And she said, I finally realized that each chapter had a date, a year, she said, but I was getting lost sometimes. She was not reading that part. And I had another friend in Ohio who messaged me and said, well, I just decided to read all the even first and all the odd chapters in order. But so I don't know, but you may be right. The producer may be right. Back and forth might be a good way to go. It certainly sets up the ending well that way, I think.
Yeah, it does. Some people have different reading techniques. If you just read it cover to cover, like I did, just cover to cover, it flows very nicely. And yes, read the chapter and the title and of each chapter. Read the title so you know where you are.
The thing about my side, which is the odd number chapters 1 through 19, with my family, it's told in first person because it's literally a memoir. Style in that, because I'm telling the story. In the even chapters 2 through 20, it's going all the way back to 1926 when my grandfather was 17. So there's no way I can tell that in first person since I wasn't there. So that's another thing, to tell a book in 2 points of view is one of those taboo things, So I think it worked really well for this book.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, I get chills thinking about the end. When I got to the end, I went, wow. You put the book down and go, I'm glad I spent that time with it. You read some books and just kind of go, oh, that was it. But I read this book and I was just so glad I spent the time with it.
Well, so far I haven't had anyone say they figured that out, before the end. So it has been a nice surprise for everyone. The thing is, the first draft or the first complete draft, you go through 100 drafts before you ever get a book ready. And the draft that I sent to my literary agent, I didn't exactly spell it out in the last chapter. I thought there were enough clues. And she said, don't overestimate your readers. And I said, okay. So I added the little bit to make sure that, and now everyone gets it and everyone is shocked, and it has just worked out well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a brilliant book, Neal. You've really put together a very brilliant book. Again, it's With the Devil's Help, a true story of poverty, mental illness, and murder. We have a link in the description of this program. I highly encourage you guys to go out there and get that book today. It's a very, very excellent read. Go ahead and pick it up today. Neal, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And folks, let's take and lighten it up just a bit. Let's bring in Beer City Bruiser. It's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals.
It's Crayon News story time.
What happened with this dude, Christ Bearer? I heard he cut his penis off and then jumped off a balcony.
Suspect pulls gun from butt, shoots twice at Denver police.
What is your emergency?
I need help.
And what's the problem?
I'm too high.
You're too high?
Yeah.
It's that time once again. It's time for Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. That time you look forward to here on True Crime Tuesday. And we need to bring in a co-host, that co-host with the most. You know him as the BCB, the big cuddly bear himself, Beer City Bruiser. Bruiser, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Cruiser. I'm back, baby.
Yes, you are. You were chopping down Babe the Blue Ox or whatever it was you were doing. Where were you again? You were in...
I was in Omaha,
that's right.
Nebraska. Well, I was Lincoln, Nebraska.
I kept wanting to say St. Louis, but I knew it was somewhere over here to the south and west of us. But yeah, you're in Omaha. That's right.
Yeah, I won the TAPW American Heavyweight Championship. So I was defending it all 3 days, and it was a lot of fun. I did some seminars, which was a lot of fun, teaching the youth, and then good old travel flight delays on the way home.
Of course, because seems like the entire U.S. right now is under some sort of watch warning or storm system, one or the other.
Well, this was pilot. So
okay.
I had a connecting flight in Detroit, and I hope I don't make listeners mad, but I hate O'Hare and I hate Detroit's airport. Two of the worst airports in the union. Hate them.
Okay.
So I had literally a 50-minute layover in Detroit. Well, my first flight was delayed by a half hour. So now my 50 minutes went to 20 minutes.
Jeez.
So I'm running as fast as I can to get to my gate, and I get to my gate, and it turns out I have an hour and a half delay.
Oh my gosh.
Connecting flight. So I'm talking to the front gate guy, and he says, yeah, the pilot that's supposed to be piloting this plane no-showed. He never checked in, never showed up. So now they're trying to scramble to find a crew that's qualified to fly the type of plane it was. Because I guess you can't just, not every pilot can fly every single plane.
Right.
So they're scrambling. And so then the plane they had ready for us, there was a mechanical issue. So they had to swap out planes.
Oh my God.
So now they're trying to find a whole crew for this new plane. And it turns out they were coming in from Fort Myers, and they landed and made their way over to make sure we could get back to Charlotte. So
wow, what a weekend! Holy cow! Wow,
yeah.
Wow. Well, we hope not to make Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals that complicated this week. It's not that complicated, although there are some different stories out there this week.
Okay.
Revenge of the we'll call it violent animals this week. As we have some animals out there that are committing some violent crimes. We'll talk about them today.
The animals are striking back, huh?
Yes, the animals strike back. That's a good way to put it, Bruiser. We'll talk about how the case of the stolen Cadbury eggs has been solved.
It has.
Yes, it's been solved. We'll talk about that as well. That's coming up today in Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. Of course,
I actually thought of you because in the airport they had a giant Cadbury egg display, and I was going to take a picture to send it to you because it reminded me of you.
I love Cadbury eggs.
Yeah, and I actually had said something to the lady that worked there. I said, "Oh, I'm surprised you got there. There was a big giant heist a few months ago."
Yeah.
She looked at me like I farted in church, but hey, I was just passing along a story you and I reported on.
That's right. And of course, we've got our not safe for work section at the end of the program. Nakedness, and a few words you definitely don't want the kids to hear. So we'll warn you in plenty of advance. It ends, let's just say it ends in a 3-way dance today. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And it's not the best 3-way dance you've ever heard of in your life. That and much, much more. Let's start it off, Bruiser, in podcasting as we're doing right now. And not in a good way. This ended violently. You might have heard of this story, Bruiser. There's a rule of thumb in broadcasting. Give them enough of yourself to get to know you. Don't give them the whole show.
Oh, exactly.
And you know that from being in entertainment.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, folks. There should be a healthy relationship with your listeners, but not so much that they can find out where you live in case there's something somewhat wrong with one of your listeners. or even do something, let's just say deadly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There should not be an unhealthy relationship there.
The crazy stalkers that are out there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a vulgar, angry stalker had left 20 messages a day for a podcaster and her husband before their murder-suicide. There was a murder-suicide committed in a Seattle suburb on Friday.
Oh, that's not good.
No. I don't know if you heard the story. It alarmed me to death. I at one time when we first started Darkness Radio had a really, really dangerous stalker. And there for a very long time, I didn't reveal much about anything about myself, my family, anything. I used to talk a lot about myself on air, and I don't so much anymore.
Yeah, I've had a few stalkers. None dangerous to an extent, but that's a real big reason that a lot of my profiles and stuff aren't me. I mean, they're me, but they're not, and that's because I want to protect, like, my kids I protect.
Yeah.
Especially my daughter. I found out real impactful when my oldest turned 18 and all the creeps came out of the woodworks messaging her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to put a post out like, hey, and that's when I'm like, okay, I got to change something here to protect them.
Yep. Yeah. It was real tough when my nephews were growing up to, I was so proud of them and wanted to, and I'm still proud of them and want to put stuff out there for them, but unfortunately it's a cold, hard world out there. And so there's very little I put out there. I'll wish them a happy birthday, but, and stuff like that, but it's very hard to, and we get to, I've had media training many times at many different outlets that I've worked at that just tell you, and I'm not going to reveal what the training is here on air, but that basically tell you how to deal with certain things. Unfortunately, when you're in the business of podcasting, it's the Wild West.
I'm surprised more companies don't do that, because when I was with Ring of Honor, they didn't do the only media, quote unquote, training we had was our public relations guy saying, you can't say this, you can't talk about this.
Really?
Like if he scheduled an interview for us, it was, especially like when the Young Bucks left or whatever, he's like, okay, you can discuss this, but you can't discuss this. But they never once tell you, here's how you keep yourself safe. Here's how you keep your family safe. Here's how you deal with, because I for the longest time, I had someone sending me clothes.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, this is scary. Not the clothes were nice, but how did they get my address?
Yeah. Yeah. Fortunately, I won't name the company, but there's one company that gave us very thorough media training on how to, keep yourself offline. Just basically keep your details offline, and how not to, don't share them with anybody who, isn't necessarily somebody you want to come into your circle. Yeah.
People got to realize that with social media today, like with social media, it can feel like you're having a one-on-one conversation. Like if I tag you in something, for instance, that you and I find funny, that's great. But there's also however many followers you have and however many followers I have that are also able to see that, because it's not a private message. It's out for the world. Right. And people forget that sometimes. Like, how did they know I was here? Well, you're checking in. When you check in at Chuck E. Cheese on Broadway and 4th, these people might show up.
And there's a lot of people out there putting together a podcast with the idea that, and there's nothing wrong with this, but putting together a podcast with the idea that they do want fame. They do want people to recognize them, and they do want, it's a good feeling that people recognize them and they are sharing their quote unquote lives with people. But there's a downside to that. There's very much a downside to that. And that is, if your podcast does blow up and you end up getting, thousands of people watching you or listening to you, your life is no longer your own, especially the more you put out there. The more you put out there, the more you're under the microscope. And there are people who hide behind keyboards who are not nice. And then there are people who will take that personal connection that they think they have with you because you've put everything out there, and they're absorbing every little bit of content that you're putting out there, and they think that it's just a relationship between you and them.
And you got to think too, some of these people, like I know our podcast, we hear it from listeners all the time, comes into their lives when they need something. Mm-hmm. They're going through something traumatic or a breakup or something, and they can escape with Darkness Radio.
And so
in their mind, and that's great. I'm not trying to say that's not. But to some people in their mind, they're like, they saved my life. They know they did that. I'm going to, and that's where it can get that nitty gritty.
Well, and let's clarify that we're here to educate, entertain, and enlighten. That's what we're here for. We're here to, and just today I reached out to somebody who was having a tough time and made a hint that maybe it'd be better if they weren't here at all. So I took the time to reach out to that person. I'm not going to mention who the person is, but I took the time to reach out to that person and remind them that they were important, that they were special. Maybe it's time to go talk to somebody who's qualified.
Yeah.
And because I knew what that feeling of loneliness was too. But here's the deal, folks. There's a bit of a barrier, a bit of a window. Even if we talk to you in chat, there's a barrier. Even we're normal guys, just like you are. We're all normal people here. There's no class warfare. There's no class separation here. It's just that with that, there would be the normal barriers that you would have with other people. Right. I mean, everybody's friends. That's true. But I'm not going to come over at 3 a.m. and bail you out of jail, or I'm not going to come over and help you move furniture. There's certain one, I can't lift anything, but especially with the new fondue heart. But you could get some cheese spread maybe for your crackers. But there's just certain things and certain I don't want to call them barriers, but there's certain places you shouldn't go.
Right.
I
always tell fans, because you've been around me when fans have approached. I'm a very approachable guy. And I always tell them, hey, if you want to come say hi, shake my hand, that's fine. You want to come buy me a beer, we'll sit down, have a beer, that's fine. If we're in a public place, if I'm with my family, let's try to make it as short and sweet. I'll still sign whatever you want, still take a picture with you. But remember, I'm there with my family, and under no circumstances show up to my house. If I don't know you, do not show up at my house. Yeah. It will not be pleasant if you show up at my house, because that's where my wife is. That's where my puppies are. That's sanctuary. That's what Superman have it. The
Fortress of Solitude.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
I'm an open, honest, outgoing guy who likes to talk to people. And I don't mind sitting and talking to people and getting to know them. In fact, I enjoy it. Not everybody is that outgoing and happy and likes to have a good conversation. So you kind of, and you get that feeling when you talk to people, whether they're open, honest, and like to have a good conversation, or they have other intentions.
Right.
It's hard to tell that on the internet. It's hard to sift that out through a text or on Messenger, or, you're not able to get a good feel is where I'm going with this. So, or even through an email, it's hard to tell what someone's intentions are. So you do have to be guarded. That's where I'm getting with this. And let's get into the story, because we've kind of belabored the point here. A Texas trucker who fatally shot a popular podcast host and her husband in a murder-suicide in a Seattle suburb on Friday made hundreds of vulgar and angry calls to the victim, leaving more than 20 messages a day, according to a report. 38-year-old, and forgive me because the name is long here, Ramin Kodakaramizai called podcaster 33-year-old Zoray Shadegi more than 10 times a day and left more than 20 daily messages for her husband, Mohammed Nazari, who is 35 years old, according to an order of protection that was obtained by KOMO News. The podcaster said that the two messages she received late last month were vulgar and angry and threatening, according to the protection order filed on March 3rd. Kodakaramizai has bursts of anger, and his delusions make me fear for my life and the lives of my loved ones, Shadegi said in her petition for the protection order. she had first told Kota Karamizai that, or to leave her alone on November 6, 2022, according to the protection order. Throughout November and December, he continued to call her on various numbers, including from nearby hotels, which is just plain creepy.
Yeah, that's scary.
Shadeghi blocked all private callers in an effort to discourage the stalker, according to the outlet. The protection order also stated that Shadeghi recently had back surgery, which limited her mobility and made her fearful about being able to respond in a crisis. I don't blame her whatsoever. All of this has caused me great distress and pain, and now I am suffering from a deep-seated fear for my safety. It has taken a toll on my recovery, Shadeghi wrote. I haven't been able to open the curtains in my bedroom out of fear of him being outside watching me. On December 20th, 2022, Kota Karamizai arrived at the couple's home to deliver flowers after Nazeri had left, prompting Shadeghi to call the police, who also collected a scarf evidence. See, he just went way, way over the boundaries on this one.
Yeah, he crossed the line and showed up at her own private residence.
In the petition for the protection order, Shadeghi wrote, Kota Karamizai has bursts of anger and is completely delusional. These delusions make me fear for my life and the lives of my loved ones. Early Friday morning, the crazed fan climbed through a window of the couple's suburban home in Redmond, about 15 miles east of Seattle, and opened fire, killing Shadeghi and Nazeri before turning the gun on himself. Shadeghi's mother, who was also at the home, managed to escape to a neighbor's house to call police, according to reports. When officers arrived, they found Nazeri lying on the front lawn with a gunshot wound to the chest. They gave him CPR, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. Shadeghi and Kota Karamizai were found dead inside the home. The assailant died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound after he had been stalking the podcaster for many months. That, according to Redmond Police spokeswoman Jill Green. So yes, folks, that's the extreme that happens when someone follows something too closely or thinks they know someone too well. They think they have a right to insinuate and force themselves into someone's lives. And if I can't have them, nobody else will. That isn't necessarily the extreme that happens every time. Sometimes it's just, I feel like I need to be there. Why can't you just get rid of whatever's in your life and be with me? Or why can't you just pay more attention to me?
Right.
That's more the more common scenario. Why aren't you just paying attention to me? And it generally ends up with blocking somebody or having to get someone involved to try and snap this person back into reality, which is scary enough.
Yeah, I've a friend of mine had a stalker, and he ended up she was it was a female wrestler, and a male was stalking her, and he ended up showing up at her house. She got off the road one day and walked into her living room, and he was sitting there on her couch.
Jeez.
Thank God he wasn't violent, but it was like you were saying, like, you know, you speak to me, your character and this and that. And she ended up calling the police, and he was ended up, in jail. And now she's got the protection order and whatnot, but she's had to change her phone number. She's had to move a couple times.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, nothing's happened to her, but
yeah.
That's this extreme. This is real extreme, obviously, him killing them, but
right. And just realize, folks, when you get to that point where you think, I can cross that barrier, or I can, I really need to, especially people who are on television. I'm not saying necessarily podcasters. Podcasters tend to be a little bit more down to earth. And you know what? The problem is podcasters, I think, are more accessible. So yeah, you can talk to podcasters. They'll talk back to you, and it's easy to strike up a little bit of an acquaintance with them. Or friendship, one or the other. I have lots of friendships with different listeners, and I cherish those friendships.
Yes.
But they're healthy friendships. They're friendships in passing. They're, hey, how you doing? Type friendships. And I've had some deeper friendships with a select few that I found out I've had, a lot in common with. But when it comes to people you see on television that you realize, maybe there are hundreds of thousands of people that are watching them, like a Jay Haas or Zach Bagans or even like a Josh Gates or someone like that, you have to realize, or a Stone Cold Steve Austin or someone like that, you have to realize that those people, they don't, although they have a circle of friends that they hang out with, it's not that they don't have room for more friends.
Right.
But the chances that you're going to crack that circle of friends and become that new best friend, I don't know that they're great. Sure, introduce yourself, say hi.
Yeah, and see where it goes from there. Because just like any other friendship, you have to start. Because if you think you're your best friend in the whole world, it didn't just start right away. You two are best friends right away. You had to build over years.
Yeah, exactly.
And go through stuff together, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So,
but that's why I'm glad you started a chat for the Darkness Radio, because it's cool because you and I can look in and see what the listeners are talking about,
yes.
Which I really appreciate, but it's not like you and I are in there constantly like, hey, pool party at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, my place, pool party, 4 o'clock. Come on over. But it's a safe place where everybody can get together and talk amongst each other, and a safe place of community is what I wanted. One, because there's a lot of division right now, and we're talking a little bit about the paranormal right now, but on the Darkness Radio Facebook page, there's an open chat there that stays open 24/7, 365. And I had the opportunity to open it up the other day, and I did. And I left it open for anybody who wanted to join. And the idea being that we could get together, we could have this community where we could talk to each other, basically get to know each other, and submit ideas, switch ideas up with each other, talk about the paranormal, talk about our interests, not leave out politics and religion to a point.
Yes.
Things that are easily flammable, we'll put it that way. But get to know each other and strike up friendships.
And what I like you said right there, it's a safe environment.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I love about that chat is everyone's respectful of one another. That's because when you see something like that, oh, great, here it goes. But no, all of our listeners have been amazing. Yeah. They've been respectful. Yeah. I've learned some stuff, and it's, yeah. But like I said, just because you and I see all that doesn't mean we're putting in there, hey, come on out and let's have a snowball fight.
Maybe eventually there might be a big get together where we say, hey, you know what? We're just going to big 4th of July barbecue or something, but it's probably going to be held at a neutral site.
A safe neutral site.
Yeah, a safe neutral site. So, maybe that'll happen someday, but that'll give us all a chance to meet each other in person. So
exactly.
In
a safe way. It's not, we're not taking to the extremes like this gentleman did.
Exactly. There you go. Let's move on, shall we?
Yes.
Speaking of being in hiding and hiding from people, I'm just kidding. That's an awkward transition. Shaquille O'Neal is in hiding.
What?
Yes, Shaquille O'Neal.
How are they hiding that giant?
I don't know how you hide a 7'3" man. Have I ever told you the biggest joke I have between intern Yoko and I?
No.
Here's a little inside baseball. So one time, intern Yoko and I are at dinner, and we're joking about. I'm joking about a thing I saw on TMZ. This was years ago, where TMZ is a little video where Shaquille O'Neal is feeding a baby elephant. And they said, and here's the interesting part: Shaquille O'Neal and the baby elephant are the exact same size, right? And they say Shaquille O'Neal is 7'3", and she goes, "Oh, well, how big is a baby elephant?"
Like 6'2".
It's the same size as Shaquille O'Neal. He's 7'3". How big is a baby elephant? The same size as Shaquille O'Neal. So I just thought that this was a Gracie Allen moment. How big is a baby elephant? So that's, whenever intern Neal
Did you
goes,
do like I do to Mrs. Bruiser sometimes when she says stuff like that, where you just kind of look and you're waiting for the laugh because you're hoping to God that they're just joking.
Right,
and they
right.
realize.
Yeah.
Then you look like they look at you with that dead serious look, and you're like, "Oh, this isn't a joke."
Now on the show we call it a Mally moment.
Okay.
But in my world, I look right at intern Yoko and I say, "How big is the baby elephant?" Whenever she says one of those things. So that's now known as the baby elephant moment.
Okay.
So yeah.
So again, how are we hiding Shaq when he's the size of a baby elephant?
Well, he's allegedly in hiding as his lawyers are failing to, as lawyers rather, for the FTX lawsuit are failing to serve him. Now, FTX is the cryptocurrency company that went under, right?
That's for the Bankman guy, right? He's in prison now because of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is, there are a bunch of different celebrities that are getting sued for just endorsing FTX, which I've never heard of before.
Neither have I.
No. And now you've done endorsements. I've done endorsements. Yes. Just for endorsing a product, you are not on the hook for it.
No.
It's a paid endorsement is what it is. NBA Hall of Famer and TV personality Shaquille O'Neal has been accused of avoiding being served a class action lawsuit filed against celebrities who endorsed failed cryptocurrency giant FTX. The former Los Angeles Lakers star was one of several high-profile celebrities, including Steph Curry, Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, and Larry David, listed in the lawsuit filed by FTX retail investor Edwin Garrison, the guy who's really shaking things up in this deal, who claimed his crypto account went bankrupt after being exposed to the celebrity endorsements, which is kind of BS. He's not going to win this lawsuit.
No. There's no way he's going to.
No, not at all. Garrison's lawyers revealed that out of all the celebrities named in the suit, O'Neal was the sole person avoiding the lawyers and noted that the allegations against him were among the most damning. It is really astonishing the measures he has gone to avoid service of our complaint, attorney Adam Moskowitz told Forbes. The irony is that the admitted facts against him are probably the worst against any of the FTX brand ambassadors. Now I want to see what they call damning here.
Yeah.
In an email sent out to the defendants on Tuesday, Garrison's attorneys called out O'Neal, writing, "We have spent great efforts, 4 different service companies, trying to get you all served with our complaint. Only one, however, has chosen to evade service in order to draw out these proceedings or to otherwise attempt to avoid answering for these allegations," the lawyers wrote. I'm an expert in bass backwards, by the way, in case you didn't know that. When you say, here's the latest scores and highlights from around the league, well, you bass backwards that sumbitch, and it's here's the latest whores and skylights from around the league.
Oh, okay.
Bet you didn't know that, right?
I didn't know that. I knew there was horrors and skylights in the league, but
yep. See, a representative for O'Neal did not immediately respond to the Post's comment. That's the New York Post request for comment. O'Neal was among the biggest celebrities touting FTX's services last year, with the former basketball star hosting a Super Bowl party at Shaq's Funhouse in Los Angeles as part of his partnership with the company. I don't think that's even that big of a deal.
No, because he had many sponsors for that. They've aired it on TBS.
That's right.
So, that's just somebody going out and going, "Hey, we need to get sponsors for this show." You know what I mean?
Yeah, we got to pay for the party.
Yeah. Hey, we got this celebrity coming in. He costs this much money. Can we find a sponsor for him?
Yeah, exactly. O'Neal continued to promote the company on Twitter, and in June, he appeared as an official FTX brand ambassador with the tagline, "I'm all in, are you?" On November 11th, the crypto giant crashed and filed for bankruptcy, with its CEO and founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, arrested in December and charged by federal authorities, who allege he swindled investors and customers out of billions of dollars by commingling funds into Alameda, a hedge fund he controlled. That same month, O'Neal tried to distance himself from the company, alleging that he was just a paid spokesperson. But he was.
Yeah, he had no stake in it. He didn't invest in it. That's just like suing Michael Jordan because he sprained your ankle wearing Air Jordans.
I don't know if he was just a paid spokesperson. He might have been paid with a share of the company.
But then again, he's just a shareholder. Oh.
Well, but again, he is a paid spokesperson. It doesn't matter if you're given a share of the company.
Right, you're paid.
You were paid in shares of the company.
And at least from my experience, you're paid for X amount of time to push this product.
Right. He says, a lot of people think I'm involved, but I was just a paid spokesperson for a commercial. That's what O'Neal told CNBC. Garrison's lawyers, however, claim that O'Neal was glad to promote the company while allegedly keeping his own finances away from it. Then he is just a paid spokesperson.
Yeah, if he had no stake in it, he's just, like I said, that's just like suing Tony Romo because he's doing the Subway commercials right now. You get food poisoning.
That's right. He admitted that his friend Steph Curry told him he could make millions of dollars if he just served as an FTX brand ambassador and lied in a television commercial that he was all in with FTX. No, that was the line in the commercial, you dumbass.
That's called acting, Shaq.
Yeah. Well, he admitted that personally he would not go near cryptocurrency. This is what Moskowitz is claiming in the lawsuit. I don't think Moskowitz understands advertising. No. The other defendants listed in the lawsuit include the Golden State Warriors, the Miami Heat's Udonis Haslem, tennis player Naomi Osaka, LA Angels pitcher Shohei Ohtani, Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence, former MLB star David Ortiz, and entrepreneur Kevin O'Leary, and Bankman-Fried himself. The lawsuit claims that the defendants never disclosed the nature, scope, and amount of compensation they personally received in exchange for the promotion of FTX, nor do they have to.
Yeah, that's their own personal money. If you want to see what they have, get a subpoena.
Yeah.
But other than that, they could have done it for $1. They could have done it for $5 million.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. That's the agreement between FTX and said celebrity.
Exactly. The defendants are expected to respond to the suit by April 14th. I'm going to use a line that I believe it was Bill Maher used on Real Time, on his show Real Time. And I believe one other comedian said this as well. If you're skeptical, and maybe it was Bomani Jones. It might have been Bomani Jones on his show on HBO. I think it was Bomani Jones. I want to give the right credit to this line. And that's this. If you have to advertise your money, your form of money on air, and you have to get people to buy into your form of money to make it legitimate, it's not a legitimate form of money.
Nope.
Don't put your money into it.
Yeah.
If you have to convince people to buy in, it's not a legitimate form of money.
Yep.
If you can't go to the airport and trade your money in for it on a currency exchange, it's not money.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
I don't get crypto at all.
No.
Hell, anybody can have crypto. Remember Akon, the rapper?
Yeah.
He has his own it's Acoin is what it's called.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of people who have their own coins, their own e-coins.
So that means in Akon's world, you could be a millionaire. But in the real world, guess what?
But funny, he's getting a piece of it.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. That's why the only person responsible right now, I think, is Bankman and anybody that invested in the company, because they're the ones that lied to all these people.
That's right.
All the celebrities, all they were are paid spokesmen that were handed a script to say what they wanted to say. That's why if you will look at all these commercials on the bottom, it always says paid spokesperson or compensated whatever, because they could have compensated with something else. It doesn't have to be money.
That's right. You're absolutely right, Bruiser. It says right in the bottom of the ad, compensated spokesperson.
Yeah, I have a deal with a place called Mad Cat Beard, and they do beard oils and stuff, and they have a Root Beer City Bruiser beard oil, and it says when he posts a picture of me, it says, paid spokesperson. I love the product. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he's covering, everybody else and myself because he's giving me product. I don't get paid money. I get paid with the product, but he puts it on all of our pictures. Anybody that he has represented, if you look at the bottom, it says paid spokesperson.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have no financial investment in the company whatsoever. So if he goes bankrupt, he goes bankrupt.
Yeah, you're going to find out through the lawsuit that these are baseless. So that they're just baseless.
It's like you said. I don't think that guy knows what advertising is.
No.
I think he really truly thinks the Miller Lite girls argue over which is better. Is it light or tastes better? Tastes great, less filling.
The guy's looking to get his money back, and he knows he's not going to get it back from Bankman-Fried, because he doesn't have any.
Yeah, He sold. It was at a Ponzi scam.
It's a Ponzi. It's a Ponzi scheme, yeah. And that he essentially blew through the money.
Yeah.
There's no money, and he thinks he's going to get it out of these celebrities.
You can go after the celebrities. That's the reason that nothing came of it, because this guy's paying all this money to all these celebrities instead of investing it into the coin.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So it's gone. The money's gone. Like the investigator said that's in there now, that took over the financial investigator that's in there now, that's going through the books of FTX. This is the same investigator that took over Enron when the government took it over to see where all the money went. He said this thing is a worse sinking ship than Enron was.
Oh, geez. That was terrible.
Yeah, and Enron was the worst financial disaster in the history of this country.
Yeah.
So FTX is even worse. They never picked up a financial book to record any ledgers.
Oh, gosh.
So, you lost your money, buddy. That's all there is to it. You lost your money.
You were a fool and you were taken for a ride.
Yeah. So unless you have money to play in that sort of market, don't throw it in there.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's all there is to it.
Or do research before you throw money at stuff.
Yeah. Let's move on. A younger brother has stabbed his 14-year-old sister in a New York City home. Again, this isn't haha stuff. This is more, serious stuff. A 13-year-old boy stabbed his 14-year-old sister multiple times with a steak knife. Get this, because she was bothering him, Bruiser. This sounds like every fight every teenage sibling has with his other sibling, except for without the knife.
And it never goes away.
No. The girl suffered wounds to her back, legs, thighs, arms, and face in the knifing around 7 p.m. at the family's 111th Avenue and 156th Street home in Jamaica, not the country, but in New York. The girl, who was in critical but stable condition, told cops her brother stabbed her. The brother said his sister was bothering him, according to cops. There was also an 8-year-old boy in the house. The girl is being treated at Jamaica Hospital. The boy is in custody, according to police.
They might want to get him evaluated.
Yeah, I think there's some issues going on there with that. Let's move on. Let's go to, I believe this is Loudoun County? Loudoun County in Virginia. A deputy cruiser was hit by a drunk driver while conducting an unrelated DUI stop. Irony on top of irony on top of irony.
How many drunks are there?
There are a lot of them, evidently, in Loudoun County. Loudoun County Sheriff's Office deputy cruiser was struck by a drunk driver in Ashburn, Virginia, while the deputy was conducting an unrelated traffic stop for a suspected DUI, according to authorities. The deputy that was hit in his car, or the deputy was hit and was in his car, was stopped in the area of Route 7 East at the ramp to 28 South when the crash happened at around 2 a.m. He was with other deputies as they were conducting an investigation to a suspected drunk driver that had pulled over about 40 minutes earlier. The font on this article is funky. The Loudoun County Sheriff's Office said that 24-year-old Christian A. Freeman of Herndon crashed his vehicle into the deputy's cruiser with the deputy inside. The crash caused significant damage to the cruiser, but neither the deputy nor the driver were injured in the crash, thank God. Freeman was charged with driving while intoxicated and reckless driving and was taken to the Loudoun County Adult Detention Center, where he is being held pending a bond review. 31-year-old Stephen A. Hall of Ashburn was the subject of the original earlier traffic stop for suspected drunken driving. The sheriff's office says he was also charged with driving while intoxicated and also was taken to the Loudoun County Adult Detention Center. He's being held on $2,500 bond. The incident highlights the dangers of our deputies and what they face every day, said Sheriff Mike Chapman. This could also have ended tragically, and we are thankful that both the deputy and the driver were not injured. Bruiser, let me show you a picture of this real quick.
I can't wait till he released the dash cam footage too. The officer's like, all right, Steven, start from B and go all the way to G. And he goes, B, oh geez. He goes, B, C, car.
Yeah, car. Move. No, we didn't say M, Steven. We said G, go to G. All right, God damn it, move. Yeah,
wow,
look
he
at that.
did a number on that sheriff's car.
Yeah, he tore up that rear end. That's what she said.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Something, huh?
It's a nice looking sheriff's car too.
Yeah, it is. They go all out in Loudoun County.
Yeah, they do. Well, you got a bunch of drunks out there.
Yeah, that's something else. Yeah, you probably shouldn't buy such nice cars if you got all those drunks driving around.
All right, Steven, can you touch your nose? Steven, why are you running? Steven, stop running away.
Yeah. We're going to get you for fleeing from the arrest. Come back. Come back. Here's an interesting story, Bruiser. Again, I'll show you the picture of this. It's audio podcast, so everybody else won't see it. But it's an interesting story nonetheless. We go to Florida, of course. It's our first visit to Florida today.
I was going to say, it took us a while to get to Florida.
Yeah, there will be a few more in this podcast. According to police, a 47-year-old Floridian was recently spotted walking into an Orlando roadway and engaging with passing cars.
Okay.
Not unusual in Florida, I guess.
No, I was going to say, I see that all the time.
Yeah. After initially ignoring demands that he show cops his hands and get on the ground, this guy's name is Richard Quick. Quick was he was handcuffed and searched. Okay. This guy looks like a mess. I'm going to show you this. You're just going to laugh. Officers reported finding a pair of knives and a crack pipe in Quick's pants pockets.
Of course.
As a result, he was charged with possession of drug paraphernalia and carrying a concealed weapon. Now, Quick also faces a resisting police count. Quick is being held in the Orange County Jail in lieu of $3,000 on his 3 misdemeanors, while an arrest affidavit refers to Quick's, we'll call it face paint.
Okay.
He is a mess. All right. I'm going to show you what he looks like here in a minute here, Bruiser. The document offers no insight as to how or why the defendant isn't just covered in what looks like brownish, blackish face paint, but the defendant also underneath is very pink. Like an extreme sunburn pink.
Okay, so he looks like a Neapolitan ice cream.
Yes, he looks like a Neapolitan ice cream. That's exactly what he looks like. Quick's rap sheet includes convictions for disorderly conduct, trespassing, battery, and theft. And let me show you what he looks like. This man's been through the ringer.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
He's definitely on some. It looks like he went to, what is it, India, where they do the color festival and they throw the colors at one another. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It looks like he was at that festival all day long. He's just tired.
It looks like he has the world's worst henna mask on.
Yeah. Or you know what? Maybe he had an upset stomach and he missed his mouth with the Pepto-Bismol.
Oh, that could be, yeah, and it's all over his face.
It is. And it's funny because it looks like he was wearing glasses at one point in time because his eyes are perfectly clean.
Yeah, they are. And his nose is too.
Yeah, so maybe he was wearing like goggles.
But his cheeks, his forehead, which is quite large, and his head are all extremely pink, and he's balding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't explain what that is, huh? They never once in the story say what he was doing.
No, they never.
Like, okay.
And he's got an open collar shirt on, and his skin is a normal tan color. So he's been out sunbathing, or he's at least been out working with a shirt off.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
it looked like he was in the Pepto-Bismol plant and exploded.
Yeah, exactly. He took a few Pepto-Bismols to the face. That's what it was. Yeah.
Oh, that's what she said.
Hey, now. Yeah. So there you go. Interesting story. Just kind of a little palate cleanser as we go to our next story. Bruiser, have you ever, I know you've been in quite a few physical brawls in your lifetime. Have you ever just had it with the neighbor's snowman and taken it out?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
Why? Tell me why first before I get into this story.
We were drunk. we were drunk after a show. We came home and the neighbors had a snowman put up and my buddy bet me a beer that I couldn't spear, shoulder tackle through the snowman. And I did.
Oh my gosh.
The funny story about that is my kids had built like a little snow fort by our mailbox.
Mm-hmm.
So I bet him the same beer that he couldn't plow through their snow fort. So he went head first. Well, guess what's in the middle of the snow fort? Our mailbox post.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He just took a step back, went, that was just mean, man. That was just cruel.
Oh. Did he hurt himself doing that?
Oh, yeah. If we were sober, he concussed himself pretty good.
Oh, my God. So he hit it.
I think it's in that point in time that liquor actually helped in the situation. But he was sore the next day.
Oh, I bet.
He had a bruise basically right down the middle of his forehead.
Oh. Well, that probably tops this story. This goes to show you just can't take out your neighbor's snowman anymore.
Not anymore. I mean,
no. Ring cameras.
Sober.
Ring cameras are a beautiful thing.
Oh, I love mine. I think it's great.
Yeah. A thug jumps out of a car to destroy a girl's snowman, but a shocked family has it on camera. That's right. You too can get busted for snowman assault. It can happen.
But it's not a real boy. It's not a real boy.
Not to you, anyways. It is trespassing, by the way.
It is, yeah, if you're going on their property.
Yep. A mean and nasty brute, as they're calling it in this article, smashed up the snowman of a young girl who had lovingly built it in her front yard. The shocked family initially thought it had fallen over on its own. Oh, so they were just gonna justify that it fell over on its own until they checked the footage.
Yeah.
Check the footage.
They went to the cameras.
Go
to the booth.
Let's go to the replay. A weird man has been caught on camera smashing up a little girl's snowman after jumping out his car when he saw it wearing a blue tracksuit. He was a mafia don. Wearing a blue tracksuit, he was seen on the family's doorbell cam destroying the 9-year-old's creation in the West Midlands. The Dudley family, not the one you're thinking of, Bruiser, initially thought the snowman had fallen over on its own, but a later viewing of the footage from the doorbell revealed otherwise. Naturally, the family was left shocked by the discovery when he got out of the car, crossed the street, and walked onto their front yard of the Broadway home. So
he was determined.
Yeah, he was.
Like, he's across the street.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm going to F that thing up.
Snowman, I can't stand snowmen. I need to get in this mob.
The snowman was sent flying backwards by a jumping kick launched by the man who drop kicked it.
You think he went back to the mafia owners and went, hey, I took care of that snowman you guys are talking about?
Yep.
No, not snowman. The snowman. He's our drug dealer.
Yeah, exactly. He deals all the coke. The family labeled the drop kick as weird.
Well, yeah. Most people don't start fights that way, but just running and drop kicking people.
Yeah, well,
especially a snowman.
It was original. I mean, he didn't tackle it head first. He was thinking of the head and neck scenario. Maybe he had a bad head and neck.
Maybe he heard the story that I just told, and he's like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to kick it in case there's a metal rod in here.
That's right. After his outburst was complete, he simply got back in his car and drove away.
Because he taught that snowman a lesson.
That's right. The family's children were devastated and are reported by Black Country Live to have been excited to watch it melt. They were looking forward to the slow demise of the snowman. They didn't want a quick death.
No, they wanted to watch him slow. These are, scary kids.
Yeah, they're creepy.
They're the ones that take bamboo sticks and slowly stick them under your fingernails.
The publication spoke to the father of the family, who said the wife had a doorbell alert when we saw what had happened. We couldn't believe it. It's weird that it annoyed him so much that he had to stop and pull over. I know it's only a snowman, but to come up onto someone's front yard, it's not on, he said. In other words, it's not sane. He added, it had started to lean over. The kids were looking forward to it melting. The little girl was said by her mom to be upset by the destruction, with the remains of the snowman left in the front yard. The girl's
You can still watch the remains melt.
Yeah, but now it's discombobulated and it looks like a snowman hit. I mean, he's not whole. He's not, it's like watching the remains of something disintegrate into ash. I know, that's very poetic. The girl's mother said the booting of the snowman was a mean and horrible thing to do and wants to find out who did it. Much of the UK has been blanketed in snow in this past week with cold temperatures and icy conditions battering much of the country. Made it even worse for the little girl. The Midlands and north of England has all had dumps and has much of Scotland as well. Let me show you a picture of what the disintegrated snowman looked like. This is why the kids are all upset, Bruiser. Look at, he's just nothing but...
Oh, yeah, he's just 2 snowballs.
He's snow piles right now.
Where's the rest of the snow?
It's melting.
Look at that front. Like there's no snow anywhere but the snowman.
Well, England isn't like the Midwest. It isn't as cold, so it's melting quite quickly.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm a Midwest boy, so when I hear snow, I think, feet of snow. That's literally just 3 snowballs.
Yeah. No, they didn't get like we have. Like we up here in Minnesota, we've gotten something like 79 inches of snow, which is like the 10th snowiest snow on record. So,
we've had 0.
Yeah, thanks for rubbing that. North Carolina's biggest snow on record would just happen to be a certain wrestling promoter running through town.
Yes.
That's all that was. Let's move on, shall we? Speaking of people who needed to be kicked, a magician was tackled on stage during a Royal Caribbean cruise show.
Some people want to know what's behind the magic.
I guess. Why would you tackle a magician? I mean, do you not believe he's solid?
Maybe, like I said, maybe he did a trick when they're like, that's not real.
No.
We need to know how this happened.
Jealousy got the best of him, evidently. Ben Murphy, an Australian TV host and magician, was allegedly attacked during his performance on a Royal Caribbean Quantum of the Seas cruise on March 1st. Just doesn't pay to be an entertainer these days.
No, it doesn't.
No. During the trick, Murphy and the volunteer sat with folded playing cards sticking out of their mouths as Murphy leaned in for a kiss. Part of the trick where the magician will swap the cards to the other's mouth. Murphy then attempted to take the card out of his mouth, but his eyes, seen on a large screen on stage, widen as a member of the crowd, believed to be the woman's partner, charged the stage and pushed the entertainer to the floor.
She's very jealous. Very, very jealous.
I guess so. My assault on board, entertainment, comedy, and magic are not contact sports. This guest should not have been allowed to enjoy the rest of the cruise, Murphy wrote on TikTok. Ooh, he's angry.
He is. They do have jail on cruises.
They do, don't they?
Yeah, they have a cell. I saw it.
Yeah.
When we did the Jericho cruise, I saw it.
Yeah, you saw the cell, did you?
I asked, and they're like, "You want to see it?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just a little cell."
You weren't. That wasn't your goal for the week, was to end up in that cell. You didn't.
Oh God, no.
No.
I'm claustrophobic.
Well, not only that, but you wouldn't be able to see waves or anything. You'd probably get seasick.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And I had stuff to do.
Well, there's that too.
Pretty solid on that cruise.
You were, yeah. You had a lot to do. Murphy claimed he suffered multiple bruises and blurry vision as a result of being tackled with cards in his mouth. Oh, dear God. Hit my head, so I have blurry vision, Murphy said, adding the onboard medical team advised him to see a neurologist, which they don't have on the ship, believe it or not.
No, that they don't have. They don't have X-ray machines or MRI machines.
Nope, they'll tell you, wait till we get back on shore. Murphy said the volunteer had given her consent for the act. Just putting cards in the mouth, by the way, not anything else. I made that sound like something else. Hit my head.
What is she consenting to, Tim?
Hey, now. She was lovely and was laughing and having a good time. She danced and giggled and gave consent for it all, Murphy said. I made that sound like something else as well. The magician alluded to officials not being helpful following the incident, saying his statement wasn't taken until a week after the alleged assault. Ooh.
That's because there's no police on the boat. There's security.
Yeah, that's true.
And technically, it's international waters.
That's right. Although the penalties are stiffer on international waters for doing that stuff.
They are.
Yeah.
I wonder what it is for a jaded lover.
They should have made him walk the plank. That would have been fun. Just right then and there. Walk the plank, matey. You know how much it would hurt if you had to walk the plank from like the pool deck and jump?
Oh, that
would have stung.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you live. Do you live on that deal?
There's footage of people jumping off cruise ships. There's a couple college kids that were, because it's illegal to do that. And I guess when they ported, these college kids decided to jump off from the pool deck, and they were arrested.
Oh.
One of them broke his leg too.
Yeah. I can't imagine that you do that jump and you don't get hurt.
No, you got to get hurt. That's high.
Because that's got to be 10 stories.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on with the story. Statements should have been taken by the witness that day, Murphy said. What's the witness going to do? She had her back turned and cards in her mouth. How they said there were no witnesses to this baffles me. Well, maybe nobody showed up for the show.
I was going to say, who was watching the show?
Yeah.
Well, at least two people were there. The volunteer and the lover.
Yeah,
they were there.
Exactly. Viewers took to Instagram to show their support for Murphy, one asking if the magician was able to go on with the show. If you finish the show, you deserve an award. It would take superhuman strength to be able to stay on the stage after that. Oh, come on, magician Chris Herrick said.
The show must go on.
Oh, God. He finished the show, 25 minutes remained, and did 2 more shows 4 nights later, Murphy responded. 4 nights later?
He had 4-day rest?
Yeah, he wasn't that hurt. Other commenters took the opportunity to ridicule the attacker. Tell me you're insecure about your relationship without telling me you're insecure about your relationship, LOL, one user said. Dog ruined the damn magic trick. Now I will never know what was supposed to happen, another user added.
That's true. You never see the end of the trick.
Yeah.
That's like having a sneeze, but you can't sneeze.
Yep, that's true. The Quantum Seas was on a 5-day round-trip Queensland cruise that departed from Brisbane on February 26th and returned on March 3rd, according to the itinerary on Cruise Mapper. Murphy's website claims he had sold out on over 300 shows in the U.S. and holds the world record for the most times someone performed the Houdini Chinese underwater torture cell.
Oh, good for him.
They didn't.
Wait, he did that to a record amount of times, but can't get a simple fall. Come on, man.
Yeah, but he can't take a hit.
Yeah.
Maybe you ought to teach him how to take a bump, Bruiser.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah.
It'll help him out.
Yeah.
And then somebody needs to look in, the volunteer needs to look at her lover and be like, what's causing this? Huh?
Yeah.
Where's this jealousy come? What have you done?
Why are you so insecure?
Exactly. What have you done?
You didn't understand. He was putting cards in my mouth. I know it sounded like something else, but it was just his cards in my mouth.
And I consented.
And it felt good to have another man's cards in my mouth.
Those cards slid right in.
Yeah, they did. They were so smooth and silky, and I loved the way he looked down on me when he slid his cards in my mouth. Anyways, let's move on. It turns out that police have cracked the case, Bruiser, of 200,000 stolen Cadbury cream eggs in Telford.
All right. We got a solution to this.
We got it. We got them. Ladies and gentlemen, we got them. I don't think I have that up and running here. Do I? The ladies and gentlemen, we got them. The theft of 200,000 Cadbury's cream eggs from an industrial estate nearly threw Easter into doubt, according to police. Well, thank God we're not doing that. The West Mercia Force, whatever, said it had been hunting individuals presumably purporting to be the Easter Bunny. The springtime chocolate treats vanished along with the gooey fondant centers from a unit in Telford on Saturday. But the eggs were found when police stopped a vehicle on the M442 motorway, according to the Force. Not the Force in Star Wars, but, the Force.
The Force, yeah.
It added officers had saved Easter for cream egg fans in the recovery of the confectionery valued at about, how much, Bruiser?
$200,000.
Oh, wow. You're going $1 an egg? Or a pound an egg. I'm sorry. It's 200,000 pounds. It'd be how many pounds?
I can't break down pounds to dollars.
It's 40,000 pounds, Bruiser.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, we won't strain with math today. Police said other chocolate varieties were taken from the site in Stafford Park. but the force appeared to flake on those details. A 32-year-old man of no fixed abode has been charged with criminal damage and 2 counts of theft.
No fixed abode? Does that mean he doesn't have a house?
I believe so.
Okay.
Oh, I got hiccups here. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And it doesn't say what kind of vehicle they pulled over, does it?
No. Scare me real quick. Tell me something about that cruise ship.
It has a morgue.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Cruise ship has a morgue?
All cruise ships have morgues.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw that too.
Okay, that'll get rid of my hiccups.
He only has 3 bodies.
And what? It can only hold 3 bodies?
Yep.
What do they do if they have more than 3 bodies?
I didn't ask.
God, you were so close.
I was.
All right, it's time now for the criminal thieving animals part of our program.
Animals revenge. All right.
Yeah, dumb crime, stupid animals, we call this.
Oh, I can't wait. I do want to tell the listeners, if they haven't seen my social medias, I did adopt a new puppy. And Ziggy now has a sister.
Oh, look at that.
A little wiener dog called Talia Al Ghul.
Mm-hmm.
Which you're a comic book fan. You know what that's from.
Yep. Yeah, that's from the Batman comics. Yep. All right, so Talia. Welcome to the family.
Yes.
Yep.
She's perfect.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
and Ziggy's a great big sister.
Yes, indeed. We're going to talk about animals that are not so perfect.
Okay.
We got a couple of stories that are not so perfect. Have we talked about Gary the goat before?
No, I'm not familiar with Gary.
Gary is a very bad goat. Gary the goat breaks into homes, steals underwear from washing lines, and headbutts everybody.
Good for Gary.
He's
out there living his best goat life.
I guess, yeah, I guess so. This is an exclusive, it says here, from the Daily Star. Gary the goat is a troublesome little prick with a penchant for stealing underwear, headbutting everybody in sight, and bursting children's footballs with his horns, it says here. Oh, he does that too.
Footballs. Yeah, he doesn't. You know what? He's like everybody else. He hates soccer.
Well, yeah, he should. Yeah.
Yeah. Boring.
It is a boring sport. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
going to play for 4 hours and score 1 goal.
Yeah, we're going to get a lot of email on that. You know.
I know we are, especially since it sounds like it's taking place in the UK.
It is. Yeah. This fed up farmer has goat to be kidding because she took her silly goat gruff to a makeshift court. A makeshift court. I'm keeping that one. Ann Lomas decided to take the drastic action after Gary the goat started causing mayhem on her farm in Cumbria. She bought the animal in 2021 from a breeder with the idea that the children visiting her alpacas could walk him. Oh, just kind of a cute little.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, but she happened to get the one asshole goat.
I guess so. But despite looking like butter wouldn't melt, within hours, Gary showed his devil horns meant business. Oh, calling them devil horns. Come on. But straight away, the 2-foot tall terror started harassing the other farm animals, stealing their food and headbutting them. Way to go, Gary.
Yeah, he just wants more food.
He's totally metal, dude.
He is.
Yeah. Anne, who carried out a mock trial in January to hold him accountable for his behavior. Hey, Anne, he's a goat.
Yeah, he doesn't know what a trial is. He's not familiar with the legal system.
He's Gary the goat, just being Gary the goat. Said that Gary has been a nightmare from the get-go. Pretty much the first day he was here, he broke into the hen shed and started chasing them around and eating their feed. Within a few days, I had to separate him from the other goats because he kept headbutting them with his horns.
He was just trying to establish who's alpha. You know the rule.
Yeah.
If you get put in prison, you find the biggest guy in the yard.
You headbutt him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Gary. I put him in with the alpacas as they're bigger than him and can handle him. But before long, he started escaping. And then started receiving calls from locals in Grange over Sands to say he was stealing their underwear. Yeah, Gary.
Yeah, Gary.
Gary's a party animal. He's a goat. She added he'd then turn up with bras and pants on his head, and we'd find undies in the barn. He gets it off the washing lines. just finding his own bra and panties and saying, look what I found, Ma. One of the villagers even found him asleep in their living room where he had broken in and left them with a very unwanted present. He's an animal.
Yeah, he's going to shit everywhere. And goat poop's not that bad.
No, it isn't.
It doesn't stink.
No. During lockdown, Gary took to terrifying customers by jumping onto their picnic benches and eating their lunch. Yeah, Gary. He also developed a habit of upsetting children by bursting their footballs with his horns.
Good for you, Gary.
Because it's a boring sport and he's just trying to tell them as such.
Yeah.
She said, I've tried putting noodles on them, his horns, but it's pointless. He just shakes them off. Because he heard that Taylor Swift song, Shake It Off. Shake it off. Yep. Anne, who has a TikTok page for her alpacas, started filming Gary's naughty antics and has amassed more than 17,000 followers.
See, now she's letting fame go to his head.
Yep, that's right. But in January of this year, after biting a farmer's bottom, Anne decided enough was enough because Gary is a randy sort, if you know what I mean.
He's like, I want that underwear. Give me that underwear.
Give me the undies. She summoned Gary to a makeshift court and found him guilty of a string of charges from theft to criminal damage and assault.
Well, it didn't help that he fired his attorney halfway through, Chuck the chicken. He fired him right away.
Chuck the chicken. Anne said now when he's naughty, he has time out in what we've dubbed the prick paddock. Oh, God.
Amazing.
Yeah. Do you think he even knows where he's being sent to?
He has no idea.
No, he doesn't care.
Nope. He doesn't know what a prick is. He's living his best goat life.
If you don't mind my saying, folks, Gary doesn't give two fucks. It gives him time to think about his actions and to give the other animals a break from his bullying. Anne has released a range of Gary-themed cards under Willow Lane Alpacas on Etsy. Or alpacas, rather. Willow Lane Alpacas on Etsy. And is using the proceeds to fund the damage that he has caused. She said, that goat drives me around the bend, but despite everything he does, I love him to bits.
Even though he's a bully goat.
He's a bully. He's a bully goat with an undie fetish.
Good for, good for Gary.
That's right. Good for Gary. We go from evil to evilist.
Okay.
That's right. If you thought Gary the goat was bad, how about some rock-throwing baboons who are breaking hikers' legs?
That's a little extreme.
It is. I think these ones work for the Mafia, Bruiser.
Yeah. This is what the guy in the tracksuit that knocked over the snowman, this is what he's trying to get to.
That's right. He's aspiring to be like these baboons. These baboons are in South Africa. They're taking out hikers. The first line of the story, monkey see, monkey through. Yep.
I'd rather have feces thrown at me than a rock.
Yeah, I'd rather they take the boulders back. 3 hikers in South Africa sustained broken legs following an attack by agitated baboons who rolled a large boulder down at them. Man. A Facebook post detailing the alleged interspecies assault is currently blowing up on Facebook. The 3 hikers all suffered broken legs after a boulder smashed down a mountain, reads the shocking post, which was posted by the Western Cape-based Wilderness Search and Rescue. According to the post, the freak incident occurred last month after a group of 7 hikers embarked on an abseiling expedition in the remote Bannock Mountains in the Western Cape. The excursion was going well until the second day when the adventurers stopped for lunch and noticed a troop of Cape baboons on a cliff above them. That can never be good.
No, when they're surrounding you like that and they have the high ground.
Yeah.
Run.
Yep. The simians, which are some of the world's biggest monkeys, weighing up to 80 pounds and measuring 4 feet long, appeared agitated and curious about the humans below, per the post. Oh, that can't be good either. This was the 3rd time I've been down this kloof, and the first time I've seen or heard any baboons up there, remarked one of the hikers. However, the alpinists didn't think much of it and continued their descent down the cliff. That's when things started to get rocky, and we aren't talking about Sylvester Stallone, kids. Two of the hikers decided to rappel on down a waterfall when a massive 132-pound boulder, yep, you heard that right, apparently dislodged by the baboon, struck the ledge the remaining 5 were standing on.
That takes some skill.
Yeah. The massive stone exploded on impact, sending shards of razor-sharp rock flying into the hikers like shrapnel, breaking 3 of their legs and leaving another with a flesh wound.
Ow.
Yeah. Meanwhile, a 5th hiker was nearly knocked over a ledge by a stone but was halted mid-fall by his safety harness.
Well, that's why you wear it.
Yep. Bruiser. That was very Forrest Gump of you. Oh, that's why you wear it.
Baby elephant.
Baby elephant. Unfortunately, the primate triggered rock slide was far from over. It wasn't a one and done.
So they're like, we're messing these people up.
The mad monkeys allegedly continued to rain stones down on the hikers like something of a medieval siege, forcing them to seek shelter in the cliff face. Despite the remote locations, the hikers managed to make an SOS call. An Air Mercy service helicopter and a team from the Wilderness Search and Air Rescue were mobilized. Upon arrival, the team used winches to lower paramedics onto the ledge where the climbers were huddled. The most serious injured hiker was then packed onto a stretcher and flown to a nearby landing zone, while the remaining 2 patients were hoisted from the ledge in rescue harnesses. Man.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to throw rocks back at them.
Right?
These monkeys want to play. We're going to play. You just hurt 3 of my friends. I'm throwing rocks back at you.
Yep, you're getting the shrapnel right back at you.
I'm aiming for your little pink butt, and it's coming right at you.
I'm putting that on the button bar if I didn't laugh over it. I'm aiming for your little pink butt, and it's coming right at you. All 3 were subsequently transported to the hospital where the 4 uninjured hikers made their own way down the cliff. We commend the 2 uninjured hikers for remaining calm and doing a fantastic job caring for the injured and wish them a speedy recovery, said WSAR spokesperson Johan Moraes. It's yet unclear whether or not the avalanche was deliberate, though primatologists have their suspicions. Get this. Whether they were deliberately throwing the rocks at the hikers or just dislodging them, I guess will never be known. But that was a lot of rocks to accidentally dislodge.
They were throwing them.
Theorized one ape researcher who specializes in rescuing the primates from urban areas. It takes a lot to accidentally dislodge a 60-kilogram boulder. No shit, Sherlock. She added that the baboons can become easily upset by things they're not used to and would be used to humans walking along cliff paths, but not abseiling down them. The idea of monkeys casting stones may seem like a very human act. However, the primate enthusiast pointed out that critters can throw very hard despite only being able to toss things underhanded due to their bone structure. Well, throwing is throwing.
Yeah, and when you're at a higher ground, like it's going to pick up speed as it's coming down at you.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, one of the uninjured hikers said they didn't believe that baboons were acting aggressively. The area is full of loose rock and debris, they explained. It's likely that rocks were dislodged when the baboons were following us on the ledges above. If this interspecies stoning was indeed on purpose, it wouldn't be the first time lower primates have displayed shockingly human-like behavior. In January, footage emerged of vengeful monkeys, that's a great band name, by the way, beating and attempting to drown a thieving rat stealing their food at a zoo in China. A far more brutal example of simian vengeance, that's another great band name. In 2021, a macaque monkey in India threw 250 dogs off the tops of trees and buildings as apparent revenge for killing one of their babies.
Oh, geez. Oh, we had that story.
Yeah,
I remember
we
that.
talked about that. Yeah, the dog-monkey battle, the famous dog-monkey battle of India. Yeah.
Did they have any response from the baboon camp? Or no, they're staying media silent.
Yeah, they stepped up to a microphone and went. That was the official response from the.
That's official, huh?
Yeah, that's the official response that came down from them. So there you go. The next two stories and final stories of dumb crime, stupid criminals are not safe for work. So we'll give you just a little bit of time to get the kids away from the listening device or to turn it down and put in your earbuds so your boss doesn't hear it because they are quite salacious.
Ooh,
We'll do that.
some Randy stories.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll start out in Florida, of course.
Well, of course.
Right. Naked man in Palm Beach says he's from a different Earth.
Where they don't have clothes.
That's right. You don't.
And meth runs freely.
Yeah, that's right. The meth flows like water. We go to Palm Beach, Florida, where a man is accused of walking down the street naked in Palm Beach and told police he's from a different Earth. Of course he is. Police arrested 44-year-old Jason Smith on charges of indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. The ordeal began when an employee from Taboo called police on Wednesday to say a naked man had just walked past the restaurant on Worth Avenue in view of a number of customers. When police arrived, bystanders quickly pointed out the man, of course they did, to officers because the man was pointing out the officers to the clients. See? Because there's only one way to point when you're naked.
Yep.
That's right.
Unless it's cold.
Well, yeah, then you're not pointing to anybody. Smith told police he didn't know where he left his clothes. Police said he refused to give his name or date of birth.
And I'm assuming he had no ID on him.
No.
Unless he had it in God's pocket, the ass.
Yeah, in the poop wallet. Smith told police he didn't know where he left his clothes. Police said he refused to give his name or date of birth. I told you that already. Officers told him to, or rather, officers took him to police headquarters for questioning. Police said he continued to refuse to give his name. After giving a name, the man told police he didn't have a social security number or an identification card. According to the arrest report, Smith told police he resided on a different Earth. He later told police he lived in West Palm Beach. Smith remains at the Palm Beach County Jail.
Good for him. Hopefully he found his clothes.
That's right. Hopefully he got that and he got his ID.
And he sobers up really quick.
That's right. And he hopefully told police which Earth he truly was from. It'd be good to know that stuff.
It is, yeah. That way they can report to your Earth. Hey, we have this guy.
I wonder if it was like a Marvel Earth or a DC Earth. Was it Earth 616 or was it, we got to know this stuff for continuity reasons.
We do.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's going with the Marvel one because the DC one had the Crisis. So definitely don't want that.
Yeah, that one's all gone and done and over with.
Yeah.
Our final story, Bruiser, has got some words I'm not comfortable saying on air, but by gosh, I'm going to sacrifice for all of you and say them anyways.
Okay.
Yeah. We're getting down and dirty. It's a three-way dance, three-way dance, three-way dance, three-way dance. Here we go. A threesome has gone bad and a couple ends up in cuffs. Although if it really truly went bad, a couple in cuffs isn't bad, is it?
No, like sometimes that's wanted, isn't it?
Yeah, I think sometimes that's a good three-way dance.
Yeah.
We're going to Florida once again. After a Florida Keys tryst went awry, multiple criminal charges followed. We're just going to get right.
I cannot wait to hear this. How does this go horribly wrong?
Oh, this goes horribly wrong with some bad words. Are we ready? Are your earbuds in and the kids away from the listening device? Because Uncle Timmy's going to say some bad words right away. These are words I haven't said on air in quite a while.
Okay.
Here we go.
Are these George Carlin words?
These are, oh, yes, they are. You ready? Brace yourselves, kids. Grandma up in heaven, forgive me. I'm about to say this in a microphone. Amid recriminations about a, quote, little dick and a, quote, stank pussy. Are you all right over there, Bruiser? He just about fell over.
I was expecting stank pussy to come out of your mouth.
I'm just quoting what was put out there. A sexual threesome dissolved into a violent encounter that resulted in two of the participants, a woman and a man, in handcuffs, and not the fuzzy pink kind either.
No, the stanky kind.
Yes, the kind that got a little stank on it. According to the arrest reports, the threesome occurred early Monday at a residence in Marathon in the Florida Keys. The home's occupants, 31-year-old Stephen Lopez and 20-year-old Angela Vasquez, told police they were in an open relationship and had invited 29-year-old Della Draper over to have some sexual intercourse.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly legal.
That's in quotes as well.
As long as it's all consensual.
Yep, everybody's on board.
Yep.
Everybody's on board.
Until we get the little stuff and the stanky stuff.
Everybody evidently hadn't showered that day, but everybody's on board. Lopez said he met Draper while driving for a Marathon taxi service. So it's Taxi Confessions, Florida style.
Yeah.
And gave her his Facebook information. Because that's the safest way to contact everybody in a threesome.
Yeah, just put on there, ready for the threesome.
Yeah, there you go. Lopez and Vasquez told cops that while the trio was having sex, Draper became extremely disrespectful, prompting the couple to request that she leave the residence. Okay.
Being disrespectful during the threesome. I'm curious as to what she did.
Well, we're getting there, Bruiser.
Yeah, I know.
We're getting there. According to Draper, she became upset when Lopez and Vasquez tried to dominate her sexually inside the house. Draper told police that she told Stephen he had a, quote, little dick. And that his wife had a, quote, stank pussy. Yes, I said it twice, Bruiser. I said it twice. That's according to the arrest report. Okay?
Okay.
A physical confrontation then ensued, with Draper alleging that she was punched, had her hair pulled, and was thrown outside. Well, you didn't exactly comment on their...
Yeah, you don't expect any retaliation with that phrase.
Yeah, you didn't exactly compliment them.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, this is the best threesome I ever had. No, this was little dick and stank pussy.
Which, by the way, would make a great cop show. I don't know if you know that.
It would.
Coming to the ID channel this fall. Little dick and stank pussy. So she had her hair pulled. She was punched, was thrown outside. As she drove away from the home, Draper added, a cinder block was thrown through the rear window of her Nissan Altima.
Wow. They take their hygiene seriously.
I guess. Evidently, they thought they were April fresh.
And the wife's looking at the husband like, it's the perfect size, honey. It's the perfect size.
And he said, honey, you ain't stank.
Yeah, you don't stank.
You don't stank. I love your scent.
You smell so good, girl.
I could eat you right
And
up.
men, no offense, men, but when women tell you it's a good size, they're lying.
Yeah, they're totally lying. That's right. If three were 8, you'd be great.
Honey, you told me to put a little stank on it.
That's right. So
Yes,
I put a lot on it. I wanted to be safe. Lopez and Vasquez said that when Draper, seated on a couch, refused to leave their home, they forcefully removed Draper by picking her up and placing her down outside the front door of the residence.
That's what I do with my puppies.
Well, called Draper a puppy. Draper then got in her car, the couple alleged, and drove the vehicle backwards towards the home's front door, where Lopez and Vasquez were standing. After the auto struck Vasquez's left leg, Lopez said he threw the cinder block at the Nissan.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
She left that part out in her statement.
Small part to leave out.
I hit stank pussy in the leg of my car. Big deal.
Well, that's going to leave out regular baths. I think, spit baths are now in order.
Yeah.
Draper then exited the car, Vasquez told police, and swung a closed fist at her, but missed. Vasquez added that she responded by punching Draper in the face. It's on now. Vasquez, Lopez, and Draper are pictured in the article I'll show Bruiser here in a minute. Let him know what we're working with here. Police charged Lopez with a felony for throwing the cinder block, while Vasquez was hit with a misdemeanor battery account for allegedly striking Draper. While Lopez bonded out of jail, Vasquez remains in custody and may be facing additional criminal charges since she told police that she is currently on probation and was not allowed to leave the state of Connecticut. That's a little ways away from Florida. I don't remember my geography correctly, but Connecticut and Florida aren't connected the last time I checked.
Yeah, it's not like you accidentally ended up in Florida.
No. Draper, a mother of two who works as a housekeeper, was not charged in connection with the March 6th threesome. But Draper was arrested for felony aggravated battery for allegedly striking another sexual partner in the face with a glass vase partially filled with gravel and rocks.
So basically, don't sleep with this woman.
No.
I don't think this woman knows what an orgasm is.
No, but she definitely knows what a right hook with an object is.
Exactly.
That's how she rewards you for a good time.
Yeah. Hey, I had a great time, small dick.
And evidently she's a size queen on top of it. The alleged attack early Wednesday came after what a witness described as a threesome in Draper's Grassy Key residence.
Wait, they were in her residence? They kicked her out of her own house?
The 31-year-old male victim, identified by cops as the father of Draper's children, suffered superficial lacerations, swelling, and redness to the left eye of his face, or left side of his face, rather, and the interior of his upper lip. At the time of her March 8th arrest, I think this was the guy who got hit with the glass vase. Yeah. So we're going backwards to the glass vase with we're
going through her sexual history and her sexual violence.
Yeah. So this guy was in Draper's Grassy Key residence. The 31-year-old male victim was identified by cops as the father of Draper's children. He suffered superficial laceration, swelling, redness to the left side of his face, and the interior of his upper lip. At the time of her March 8th arrest, Draper was free on bond in connection with her bust last year for battery on a law enforcement officer, possession of drug paraphernalia, tampering with evidence, and resisting police. So she's got what we call a rap sheet.
Yeah, this is a party girl you avoid.
Yep. As detailed in a July 2022 arrest report, Draper was a passenger in an SUV that was spotted swerving on a Marathon roadway after the vehicle, which was being driven by a 39-year-old female friend of Draper's, was pulled over. Draper allegedly tried to dispose of an open bottle of tequila, which is a great thing to drive or drink and drive with. Why put it in a thermos when you can drink it straight out the bottle?
Yeah.
She also reportedly scuffled with cops who reported finding drug paraphernalia beneath Draper's seat. She's an upstanding young gal.
Yep.
While Draper and her friend, who was arrested on a DUI count, were being driven to the Key West jail, they began engaging in romantic acts in the rear of a police cruiser.
What is with this woman? Holy cow.
She's a little amorous. According to court records, cops reported that Draper, whose hands were cuffed in front of her, was fondling and kissing her friend. An officer then stopped the car and handcuffed Draper with her hands behind her back. Draper reportedly responded by pulling the rear of her bathing suit to the side and asking the officer, "Do you want to see my asshole?" And that's how we end this story, Bruiser.
The mouth on this one.
Yeah. I don't think...
You don't know unless you ask, right?
You don't know unless you ask. Do you think the cop went, "Well, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, we got a few minutes before I take you in and you're in jail. Sure, let me take a look at the brown eye. What do you got?
Let me turn my body cam on just to make sure we get all on film."
Yeah, I want to take this to your proctologist to make sure everything's healthy. So I'm sure, why not?
Is that a polyp?
Is that a polyp you got going there? Now, dun, 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 dun. Here's a story of 3 people trying to get it on. Can you see this?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He kind of looks like a broke-ass Ice-T in his early days, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Yep. Like a broke-ass Tracy Murray before he became Ice-T.
Yeah, I'd avoid both of them. I'd avoid all 3 of them.
I'd avoid both of them. The
women are okay looking, but like not worth the hassle.
Yeah. Yeah. The minute people start whipping cinder blocks and stuff like that, we instantly regret our night.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Yeah. That's just fun. That's fun till daddy smashed our T-Bird up.
It's fun till you have to look at someone's asshole.
That's true too. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, so that'll do it for Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals today. Oh boy.
That was a good one to end on, though.
Yeah, that's what they said.
I'm taking mental notes on what not to do when the police show up. Don't try and get rid of the tequila right away. Don't sit in my drug paraphernalia. Stop making out with my friend in the backseat of a car. And don't ask a cop, hey, you want to see my asshole?
Exactly. There are a lot of avenues to take. It's like choose your own adventure. Yeah, never go for the opening, driving with the open bottle, asking the cop if you want to see your a-hole.
And it's not good pillow talk by going, hey, you have a little dick and a stanky pussy.
Yeah, you probably don't want to start the threesome out that way.
No.
Yeah, probably compliment the eyes. That might be a good way.
Not the brown eye.
Not the brown eye. No. Maybe, hey, good form.
Yeah,
that'd be good. Yeah. Or thanks for inviting me over. That's a good one. Good one to start with.
What a lovely apartment you have.
Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate you guys being so open about this.
You know, else works? A high five.
Yeah, high five. Yeah. Hey, man, nice work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard to find a threesome in this part of Florida.
Man, I took the right taxi home that day.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, there's plenty of lines to leave off with. Little dick and stank puss ain't the way to make your departure.
No, it's not.
Unless you follow it up with, what do you think of that as a pilot for a new show? I'd like you guys to star in it. Try to leave it on a compliment. Complimentary.
It's like a compliment sandwich.
Yeah, compliment sandwich. Just say, hey, thinking about pitching that to CBS. I think maybe the old folks.
You start off with, this is a lovely apartment you have.
Yeah.
Hey, little dick and stank pussy. I just wrote a pilot for CBS. You guys want to star in it?
Yeah.
Look at that compliment sandwich.
Yeah, I think we can get LL Cool J to star in it as well.
Or Ice-T.
We got Ice-T. We can get LL Cool J. If not, I know Ice Cube's available. So, I think we can make this thing soar. What do you think?
No, let's do it.
Speaking of soaring, hey, look at that cinder block headed for my car. There's so much ground to cover, so much ground. All right, that'll do it for today for True Crime Tuesday. I want to remind you guys about our guest, Neal Wooten. Not that he fits in any of those categories, that last story. No. Neal Wooten, very nice guy. With the Devil's Help, a true story of poverty, mental illness, and murder. Pick up that book. It's in the description of this show. We've got a link there for you to click. And very good book for you to check out. Pick up that book. And man, has it got a twist. It has got a twist at the end of this book that you're never going to see coming, Bruce.
Okay.
It's one of those rare books that you're going to want to check out. So, good book. It's got the criminal element in it. It's got cringe moments in it, and it's also got a little bit of tragedy, but it's also got a redeeming quality to it too that you're going to want to read. So, Neal Wooten's With the Devil's Help, a true story of poverty, mental illness, and murder. Tomorrow on Darkness Radio, supernatural news. So we've got that coming up. Yep, got that. Got lots of interesting stories for you from all around the paranormal and supernatural worlds. That'll do it for today's episode. For Beer City Bruiser, I'm Tim Dennis. Join us for Darkness Radio tomorrow. And thank you so much for joining us today for the best in true crime podcasting. This has been True Crime Tuesday.